Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to City of Farmers Branch study session. Today is Tuesday, July 18th, and our first order of business is A1, discuss regular agenda items. Councilman Merritt.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see. On a couple of items on the consent agenda. On item H5, the the amendment for the detailed site plan. You give a quick summary of what that change is? Since it's going to be on consent, it'll roll right through approvals potentially.
Sure. Chris Webb, Business Development Specialist with Economic Development and Planning. H5, they are really wanting to convert a portion of the existing commercial retail on the ground floor into multi-family units. In addition to that, there would be 3 attached garages and then 2 sets of detached garages, and behind, I guess, in between the multifamily units and those detached garages, they're going to be looking into amenitizing that space for the residents within that little area. The thing that's driving this, request to amend the site plan is the fact that they are struggling with tenancy, and they have been over a period of years for those businesses or the suites that are south of the Porte-Cochere on that property. And in order to make it more useful for them to see it and bring that to multifamily being the best route to go. They're still in line with the east side plan over there because they are maintaining a portion of retail and restaurant use. So as far as staff is concerned, looking at it still aligns with what the east side plan calls for over there.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that update. Mayor, I also have a question on H6, which is installation of the policy for non-regulatory signs. Thank you, Ryan. Obviously, we just talked with planning and zoning, and we talk in the policy about signage for other regulatory signage. Should we also make a mention that there is a signage component for businesses that is inside the planning and zoning ordinances as well?
Ryan Sawyer, Director of Public Works. The signs you're speaking of are actually handled by planning and zoning. That's part of what they do when businesses come in. The signs we're talking about are more of the duck crossing signs, children at play signs, signs that are placed in the streets, but not necessarily enforcing any type of traffic regulation.
And you'll remember when we had the conversation on the previous policies, we thought there might be some need for some definitions and some pointers, if you will, to that sort of delineation of use case. And so I wanted to make sure that we define what a non-regulatory sign is in our policy or in our signing ordinance, if you will. So that's my ask.
We can address that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question on the public hearing, but I'll wait till that occurs. And then, Mayor, I have a request that we move item H3 to the regular agenda to allow the community to understand what actions are forthcoming with this particular action. You'll remember when we received an update on this back in
Yes.
June, there's a number of subsequent steps that are forthcoming.
Well, we had one presentation on this already, and do you want to move this whole discussion to regular agenda, or can we go ahead and I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me confer with my council, the city manager here. What's your opinion?
This is purely a process step. The meat of the discussion was at the last meeting where we met with them and talked about we needed direction from council on which pathway to go. Now that we have that direction, this is triggering to update the preliminary SAP cost determination resolution and calling the public hearing. So it's purely setting a step. There won't be any loss of any possible discussion because this is a step to start a process, not really anything other than that saying council recognizes the step with the PID, something we have to do for the process to move forward.
Yeah, because there was a timeline. of
Correct.
when certain things had to happen, so we know this is coming back at a couple of other dates. I just don't have those.
July 30th will be the publication to the newspaper, so we send that out for a public hearing, and then August 15th, we'll have the council meeting with the public hearing for final approval. So that's where the discussion points will come forward. So at the direction either way.
So has anything changed since our last meeting where we received the presentation on this?
No, I think you've explained the process as well. So
There'll still be ample time for public comment.
yes, there will.
Okay. You good?
Good. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councilman Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing on the regular agenda. However, on the consent agenda, H5, it's my understanding, Chris, that they're going to keep some retail on that first floor, like a cleaner, some small.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They're still gonna keep about 9 to 10,000 square feet of retail space.
Mhm.
It's, you're familiar with the site, they have that little portico that allows access to Broadstone in the parking lot. Everything that's north of that is going to remain as commercial retail space.
Yeah, yeah.
To help serve the residents. And,
Yeah, they just had a hard time, I think, with retail, like restaurant traffic
absolutely.
down there. And I think it's a good idea to take advantage of that and turn it into residential.
Mhm.
Okay, very good. Thank you. H7, the property maintenance code and building code. So my understanding is we're just simply combining two chapters of our code and updating the language. One of those components is changing terms like dangerous to substandard, realizing dangerous is within the definition of substandard, right?
Yes, essentially, yes.
Okay. If we have a substandard structure, for example, a home that has a wooden fence, and behind the wooden fence, you have overgrowth, dead vehicles under a tarp, a green pool. How do we enforce this type of code if we can't see it? Because my understanding is if you can't see it, we can't address it.
Yeah, and sorry, Jared McGraw, Code Enforcement Manager. So with the substandard building, it refers specifically to the building itself. Now, if there are other property violations on that property, those can be handled much like the substandard building. We could get onto the property via inspection warrant if it's something that we're unable to see, say from a public right of way. We could provide evidence to the judge saying, here's why we believe this, we need to get onto this property to inspect whatever it is, the violation or the building itself. So we have to provide evidence to get that sign off by the judge, but if it's something that's provided to us, if it's something we can see to an extent, or if it's just information provided from, say, a neighbor, a statement, something that we can take to try and get on the property.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Jared.
Councilman Jackson, if I may, one of the intents of this is to fill a gap with building, maybe a home that's burned or significant fire damage that's hard for us to enforce. Yes, there's the property maintenance code, but there's always, hey, they can get permits that I can go for up to 18 months. This allows us a little bit more teeth with those type of structures because we do have a burned out house that we're having some difficulty enforcing. This gives code enforcement more latitude to help in those situations. And that's one of
Okay.
the outcomes that really is driving this update.
Okay. Very good.
Councilman. Jared, I'm just going to say, I would like you to come back at some soon future date. So you can explain to the council here and those listening, how residents can report things that they see, which you are not able to see. Okay? There seems to be some issues with that. And I just want to make sure that we're all clear on what latitudes residents can give your department so they can look on another property.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Baird will be here about 2:30. He's at another meeting.
I'm good.
Councilman Bent?
Yeah.
Okay,
Nothing from me.
very good. I had another question about H5. And that was, since we are converting some of what was going to be retail space to living space, does that have a impact on the value of the property itself and thus cause it to increase in value?
It I don't know how officially I can answer that, but yes, that's the intended effect of that change. Is it would increase the value of that property and also bring more, I guess, officially it could bring more income into the city too, since it's being utilized for something rather than just an empty shell.
Okay.
That's just sitting there.
And is that up to DCAD to assess that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, very good. That's all I have. So, moving on. A2, receive an update from Economic Development Director and our development partners at Centurion American in regards to the boardwalk development.
Good afternoon. So we are having a status update on the boardwalk tonight. We have our development partner and owner of the tract, Centurion American Development Group. They are here. But before I call them up to go over their entire development, I'm just going to give you a visual reminder of first, where is the boardwalk? We keep talking about it. Off 635, just east of Luna Road. You've probably seen the track and some of the shell buildings go up near the lake. The developer has provided names of concepts that are going to go into the shell buildings, and he is going to get into the specifics of what those concepts are tonight. I wanted to just revert back to what's been approved. So this was approved 2 years ago by the city council already. So the buildings are approved, many are already built, and the landscape package is approved. We had a sign approved, many plans were approved. And what we're talking about tonight is a change to a portion of the western part. Sometimes in commercial real estate, things work out and sometimes things don't. And sometimes that's a blessing because you get something better, kind of like a better fit. So tonight we're going to talk about what I would call a better fit for Farmers Branch. We're going to talk about a pickleball concept that could be coming to the western tract. And again, I'll let Centurion American describe what that is. I'm just here to tease it up. Okay, so here's a site map that they are going to talk about. Everything from Black Agave, Barrel and Bones, Doe Brothers, Copa Club, Bugatti's. I know some of us went to eat lunch there. We know where that is. A Drunken Oyster. And then on the left side, you'll see pickleball court. You'll see a pad site, which means a site where parking usually is. Now that is not approved yet. So that's a concept plan that they would like to bring forward one day. And they're going to talk to you about some changing of sign, because there are now going to be so many tenants that visibility along the 635 corridor will be needed. So I'm going to leave this here before we start the pickleball concept. And I'd like to first introduce some of the Centurion team, and then I'd like to call the project manager up. So we have Murdad Moyetti, who is here with Centurion American Development Group, the president. We have Sean Terry, his right-hand man. We have Michael Beatty, who everybody knows over there because he's been working the whole west side for 6 years, I think, 7 years? I don't know, forever. We have Chris Zilke. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your last name right. Forgive me. And we have the whole development team, the Kilchner brothers, and then Stephen, I forget your last name, Stephen, I'm sorry. Yes. So, Chris, do you want to come up and talk about the concepts and talk about the pickleball that I'm most excited about? Because I know some of y'all play pickleball. I've seen some of y'all play pickleball, and it's a little bit of a craze, but I feel like it will stick.
Queen, get these out.
Let me help you, Dave. Let me help you dig them out.
Hi, guys. I'm Christopher Zilke.
And I have pickleball separate.
Got it.
Tell me.
Okay. First, I just kind of want to give an update where we're at. This project was a little bit delayed because it took Encore about 18 months or so to get the transformer set. And then we had a Spectrum hit one of the lines to the transformers and blew up one of the transformers, which took about 3 months to repair. But building 5, which is the one that is built, is set to be, we have the final inspections called in actually for tomorrow. And so we expect to have the CO by the end of the month. The Kelchers plan on having that open by October 1st. And that will be Barrel and Bones. It's going to be 3 concepts in one. It'll be Barrel and Bones on the front side, which is a barbecue concept that they have 3 other locations, one in Carrollton, the Colony, and then on Inwood and Forest, they're about to open another. So, and then a new concept called Black Agave on the backside. They plan on making this and then Doe Brothers will be pickup only. So it'll be a pizza pickup and then the 2 other dining. It'll be a very dynamic concepts. They plan to have music on the back, and I'll let them kind of talk a little bit more about those. Copa Club, we have a lease already, and that is the gentleman that has Hugo's Invitado, who is a very, very well-established restaurateur. He plans on doing kind of a private club business meeting. You know, he kind of pitched it as golf club without the golf course. So he plans on making that something very business friendly, lots of lunches, and have memberships. Bugatti's is an Italian restaurant that was around for 40 years. They're great friends of Merdad's. They are already leased, and we have some drawings going, so that should get started soon. Drunken Oyster, we are finalizing her lease. She's coming from Amarillo, and it's a Cajun concept. She just won Rising Star for the Texas Restaurant Association. She's getting a lot of press. She's had a lot of TV. Her name is Rory, and it's kind of an Cajun concept with an absinthe bar. And so it's also a very fun concept that should kind of help round these out. And then get to the pickleball concept. I know there had been talk before about putting a gas monkey there, but we felt there, especially with the city getting the pickleball national championships and everything that's going on there, we felt it's a little more family friendly, neighborhood friendly, and something that the Kelchers have been working on for a while. We know that we'll be able to park it for one, and it'll be a little less rowdy and something that's more of a benefit to the neighborhood. So having said that, I'll let these guys kind of talk a little bit about what they plan on doing with the pickleball concepts, the Kelchers. You want to go ahead?
Good afternoon.
There you go. Just scroll down.
Okay, I'll let Mark talk. First of all, good afternoon. I'd like to introduce us, Dirk Kelcher, Mark Kelcher, Stephen Rant. Mark and I started in the restaurant hospitality industry 29 years ago. We opened a small bar and grill near SMU, and we've operated 35 different restaurants and bars over the last 29 years. We currently have 14. The pickleball is something Mark started playing when it first moved into kind of became popular in the
at Brookhaven. As a matter of
Brookhaven.
fact. And, I mean, for the fastest growing sport in America, it's surprising the lack of public availability of courts. I mean, there's nowhere to go play unless you belong to a Brookhaven, a T-Bar M, or And so the fact that Chicken and Pickle has proven the concept in and of itself, but you can't get it. It's full. Every single day, 7 days a week. So one, they have 8 courts. We're wanting to build 20, have a lot more availability for the public, and have some membership model so that you could belong very inexpensive, $20 a month, but you can make a reservation a week in advance as opposed to 2 days in advance. Something that it's difficult. Even at Brookhaven, you have a hard time. Now hopefully after they build these courts and the championships here, we'll have more courts to play on. But right now, 24 hours is when you have to make a reservation, and it's tough sometimes to get in. But I believe in the concept. I've been playing for since Brookhaven built the courts. And there's always a steady demand. again, fastest growing sport in America. So there's a reason for it. Anyone can play, any ability. And I think it'll draw a lot of people. We put a great food and beverage concept with it, very affordable, inexpensive, an outdoor area for those that do not want to play, but you know their friends are playing, or groups, or I understand you guys may have gone on a trip to Chicken recently. I mean, everybody doesn't have to play, but it's still a great time just to, you know, hang out in the courtyard, watch the people, you know, cheer on your team, and anybody can play.
And team building and corporate events are a huge draw for them.
So, I mean, that's kind of the pickle. I mean, and we have the F&B, the food and beverage background to support, you know, if we have 500 people that, I mean, obviously parking would be, but, you know, however many people show up, you know, with the other restaurants on the other end, you know, we'll be able to support all the food and beverage side of it as well, and really make it an activity or a location that everybody can enjoy.
One other thing I wanted to bring up, that for the concepts, for both concepts, the restaurants and the pickleball, that we're planning to put together is a golf cart, like one of those little limo golf carts, 6-8 person golf carts that runs along that trail back through the apartments and by the hotels there, and then comes back. So it's not necessarily on the roads; it's going to be on the trail, but to help bring people. I mean, it's safety. It's, you know, no drinking and driving. It you know, encourages and helps bring people, especially out of towners that may have flown in and took a taxi and they're staying in one of those hotels. They won't have, you know, they're not going to call an Uber necessarily, but we can use our quote unquote taxi service, and we'll logo it and, you know, kind of make it fun, but it'll encourage, you know, safety so people aren't by themselves, and get people around from, you know, within a mile or so of the
potentially gaining access to the Omni Hotel, running it almost like a bus schedule, if you will, having designated pickup spots and amenity for the apartments and condos that are in the area, and same thing for the hotels as well. And again, my name is Steven. I oversee the brands for the Kelcher Group. Just to touch on the Black Agave, Barrel and Bones, Dobros, my mission, our mission has always been to have an environment for all walks of life, everything from the little ones on up to a festive environment, having a menu that offers everything from lighter fare for someone that just wants a nice light lunch, all the way to the sampler platter of barbecue, right? If you really want to go for the meat. So I think by having these three brands in that location, we'll offer something for everybody in the area at all times of day.
Any questions?
I'm going to go ahead, Councilman Jackson.
I have a question. Thank you, guys. We're pretty excited to see something like this at Farmers Branch. I couldn't find it just now, but I recall there being the restaurant part of the pickleball concept is 3,000 square feet. Is that right?
I think it's 4,000.
Yeah. It's about 3,500 square feet. It's
Okay.
2 stories.
Okay, 2 stories, and that counts both
Yes.
floors. Is that, it just strikes me as a little small. I don't have a concern about it, more of a curiosity.
I think from the standpoint of, if it's raining, we do have half our courts are covered,
Right.
but obviously we're not, it's a lot of outdoor area. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a 2nd-story patio to be able to look over the lake, look out at the pickleball, and be able to, but if it's freezing cold, there's not going to be a lot of players. I mean, again, it's your Katy Trail Ice House, it's your, you know, Chicken and Pickle, it's your,
Right.
you know, those type places, Truck Yard, etc. That if they don't need a big indoor area to, I mean, you need a kitchen,
Mhm.
and then everything else, it's an out. I mean, we're gonna have
misters and
misters
heaters.
and heaters everywhere. So
Sure.
with the covered courts, it will be year round. But you know, you don't, if it's 12 degrees outside, a lot of people don't think, hey, let's go out. So, I mean, I think the size is proportionate to what it needs.
What I was wondering was, there are several other restaurant concepts right there in a row. And by keeping it from being such a large restaurant, I think patrons would have choices or be able to go to other restaurants and then still come down and play games, right? So it doesn't take a lot of business away from the other restaurants because it can handle.
I mean, that's
more
part of the
people.
goal, is that people will say, hey, let's let's go here, let's make this a walkable. We've
Sure.
got to be symbiotic with all the restaurants.
Right.
I mean, and going back to our very first days by SMU, there were 5 bars, restaurants right on Yale Boulevard back in the day. And we all shared, we all had the same customers. But if one was a bad apple, it didn't succeed for everybody. We're always better. It's that restaurant road mentality. If you have 10 restaurants, you guys better all be friends. And then the more people that come to the area, the better for all of us.
Right. Right.
And so by having bookends of our own concepts, we're going to encourage people to, hey, try out Copa, try out Lucati's. If you may be our customer today, but you're their customer tomorrow, and you're, the third, on Friday.
Right.
So we want them coming to this neighborhood
Then-
constantly.
Right, drive there, then make the decision. Hey, let's just drive over to Mercer Crossing, and then we'll decide what we're doing.
So 5 years ago, I opened up 4 locations at Legacy West, and that was what drove the traffic there. Was it gave them a location where they could literally park and spend 4 to 5 hours in the area, whether they're starting at Legacy Hall and working their way down to Lululemon or whatever that may be. But I tell you, the average time a guest would spend in that parking lot was about 3.5 hours. And that means you got some at the 1 hour, some at the 5+ hours.
Sure.
I think something like this brings a similar demographic to be able to come in, park, and spend the afternoon, spend the evening, and do something different every hour. you
Right.
know.
The Copa, you said is owned by Hugo?
Yes,
Hurtado?
yeah, Mark Holm that owns Hugo's
And
Invitados.
that Hugo's is in Las Colinas.
He has the Las Colinas, and then he had West Village, and he's actually putting a location up in Westlake as well.
Okay. That's exciting. I've been
Yes.
to Hugo's. That's a very different vibe. That
So he's not, he's not putting Hugo's there, but yes,
Understood.
he definitely knows what he's doing, and
Right.
it's a very
Right.
respectable upscale concept.
Right, very nice. And then lastly, just generally, this area, it's in what I would consider is a little bit of an odd place, right? There's a highway, the road kind of dead ends into, I don't know if it's Goodnight Lane or whatever it is at the end. There's one road that goes under the bridge fairly close by, so it's in, close proximity, but have you looked at the traffic layout and sort of understand how easy is it for people to get to this location and get away from the
It is-
location?
It's definitely a challenge, which is one of the reasons we have the pickleball here, is to really give
Destination.
a destination, something that, it's also the reason why we will be asking for this billboard and having that be digital. We're going to have to work to get people to the site. It's difficult to get out of. You're going to have to do the U-turn or kind of wind your way in, but we feel very strongly that with the right concepts, the right brains, the right operators, we're going to be able to get people to the site.
And that's another reason for the golf cart taxi service is we did demographics of the area, and there's, 7,000 some apartments within a mile and a half, plus hotels. And so if we can,
Single
get-
family just
right,
across. and Mercer
and then
Crossing.
just single family on the other side, if we can get the people there so that, using our own method of transportation.
And I believe the access to get to the location is very simple. It's the exit, right? Just like
Right.
you pointed out there,
You gotta
especially if
think
you're going
ahead.
eastbound.
Yeah.
But the access to get to the location is very simple.
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, and the Chicken Pickle in Arlington or Grand Prairie has one of those huge
Yes.
digital
You do.
signs out front, and when you're going down, what's that highway?
360.
360.
The
yeah.
highway there, the tollway, you can kind of see it.
Yep.
So that you go ahead and exit, because if you miss this exit, it's
You
kind of a
gotta go all the
pain to
way.
get back
Yeah.
You do.
to it. So, okay, very good. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Merritt?
I'm very excited for the proposal, guys. Thank you for, making this a destination. I really appreciate hearing that sort of moniker being applied to it. I think most of the questions that I had were addressed in Richard's comments and in your presentation. So I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Roman?
Yes. First of all, thank you for the presentation, for the update on the project. I know that it's not my district, but I live out in that area and I share a small portion of Mercer Crossing. And so I know there's been a lot of questions about what's been going on. So I appreciate you guys catching us up on some of the struggles that you've had to endure and to get to this point now. Can we go back to the slide where we had the layout?
Yes.
Probably have to go
The
up.
entire layout of the
Yeah,
whole
the map.
site?
Yeah, the map.
Yeah.
I think it's scrolling up. No, go ahead.
Yeah, that one. So do you have leases for all of, well, obviously the
So-
TBD is probably not, but I'm
No.
trying to understand
So
which ones you have
this
leases
lease
for.
is completed.
Okay.
This lease is completed. Bugatti's lease is completed. Drunken Oyster is in final lease negotiations. Obviously, these are the guys with the pickleball, so we have to get that approved by y'all and
Sure.
submitted before we can get a lease. So for these three buildings are pretty much leased, either completely completed or very close to being completed.
What about the one north of the little small one, I think is the hamburger?
This, I was gonna bring that up next. This is something that we're gonna have to get you all to vote on. We need to get that one approved. So
Got it.
we'll be submitting for that, along with the parking study
Mhm.
shortly. As soon as that is, he's definitely committed, has an LOI, but we need to approve the building before we get a lease.
Okay, sounds good. And then what would be the timeline for opening? You've mentioned the one on the east,
Yes, October 1.
and you said that one would be open later this year. Was that early? next year?
October 1
October
for
1.
this whole building, all of these.
Okay. And then what about the
So
remaining items?
these, both of these buildings that have leases, they are signed, so their clock is ticking on our side, so they have to start paying rent. So they currently have it in architecture, and hopefully plan submission in the next 30 to 60 days,
Mhm.
and then what 6 months build out. So call it 8 months or so.
Alrighty, sounds good. And then I know you've mentioned someone mentioned something about parking, and I've heard that a few times before. But to my understanding, there's a little bit of a plan B in the event that there's a significant problem with finding parking.
Sure. I actually had a parking study done recently again, when we started talking about the pickleball concept. We didn't want to go too far down the road with that until we knew we'd park it, and we have plenty of parking.
Okay.
So far. And
Okay.
that was part of the reason we kind of shrunk the size of that building and focused on the courts. We have enough to park everything that's shown here.
And then I had another question. So recently I was contacted by an individual who I guess is coming to planning and zoning in the next few weeks or month for a pickleball concept as well over on 35 in Valley View. Have you guys considered that one, and does that coming to fruition do anything to your plan?
No, we certainly want to be first to market. We've talked about that, getting this done quickly. But I think there's room enough for multiple people. But yes, we want to be first to market. I've read a little bit about that, but it doesn't concern us.
Sounds good. I don't have any other questions at this time. Thanks.
Councilwoman Bennett?
Well, you are my district. Thank you, guys. You answered a lot of the questions that I had with Councilman Roman. When you say the parking study for everything that's there, is that including the TBD?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Just wanted to
It is.
confirm that.
And what we are talking about, the TBD, we are talking about making that an event center.
Okay.
So that's not finalized, but that is what the conversation is. But yes, we did a parking study about a month ago.
Thank you.
Councilman Bear?
Just thank you. Everything I saw from your presentation earlier looks great. This is great to have this development here.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we'll see you October 1st or before. These guys can throw a party, and the food that is being catered today is also by these gentlemen. So
Absolutely.
you can taste it tonight.
Absolutely.
We have
So
one more
Z
question.
told me he was going to be here by April.
He wants to be here by April. I hear from Z and Michael every day. Let's get this going. So now that we have power, they're
All right.
moving quickly.
Yeah, the product being catered today is from all three locations on the east building.
So, Chris and Radad, I want to say thank you to you and your team and to you all for the investment that you're going to make in the city. I don't have any questions. I read all of this. That's just your section. And I'm quite comfortable, and I've had conversations with staff, but, you know, I am super excited about this whole area getting open. And it's been a long time coming, lots of challenges, many of which were out of our control. But I thank you for persevering. And I also want to thank the city staff for working so diligently to help support our partner in this project. And whatever comments you want to make.
I think the guys mentioned, but it's important to us, is that lake. And the amount of space that we have out there to be able to hold 400 or 500 people for a concert if we have to, you know, small concerts around that. But we're really open for us to activate that area because that's going to be the customers that are going to spend money with these guys to keep them going.
That's the stage over the river.
And that whole area. So,
Okay.
anyway, thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. Were you going to talk about the other two, Conza Hamburger and?
Yeah, so that is Skyrocket Burger. He's got 3 locations. We're gonna submit for that to get a vote once we have a little bit more drawings. But that is, it's a fairly small burgers and shakes, real simple, real casual. And he's very interested in coming. We're actually meeting him later on. But he's known Murdad for a while, but he's got a location in Denton. They have one down in Deep Ellum. They've been voted best burger by multiple publications, and they're just a really nice, solid burger place that we'd like to put on that pad.
Yeah, I think one of the things also, Mayor, is that we're trying to have about the same size as Trinity Groves, and to want to become a destination for eating and drinking and entertainment, retail, as you mentioned. You know, we've tried a few things, office buildings, same thing. So we're doing the best we can to go from there. And our investment here is not just on the real estate side. You know, a lot of these guys, we're partners with them just to make sure to get them here. So we're investing.
Well, you know, again, I think it goes without saying, we appreciate it very much. We look forward to having these places open so we can send our residents over there to patronize them and keep them in business. So, yes, sir.
Mayor, one other thing I'd like to point out that I think it's important for residents to hear is the diversity in the experience that this entire project offers. From a very economical, let's go get a burger and a Coke and walk over and play some pickleball, to an exclusive Copa Club feel. Bugatti is a very established, long-time, well-respected, known, successful Italian restaurant in Dallas. There's just a lot going on here that offers a big variety for what I think represents the residents of Farmers Branch. And so this, again, this is fantastic.
Thank you. I feel the same way. I hope I made enough money and get some money out of it.
Right.
Okay.
I'd like to call up Sean Terry with Centurion for a quick minute. He's got to wrap this up for us.
Yeah, Mayor, we just want to thank you and council because I think, and Allison with EDC, you know, this has been an evolving project. You know, we've been through, like I said, through COVID, through digging out the lake to make sure it stayed at constant level, to hearing what concepts that the city wanted. We worked a lot with staff, city manager, coming up with what fits Farmers Branch. And I think, you know, we paused it for a little bit because we thought we might have a vision for volleyball courts out there. And so I think now we have this product that, what you said, Councilman, a while ago, was kind of fits everybody. And that's what we wanted to do. But we want to take some of the credit. We're corporate, you know, our corporate officers are here in Farmers Branch. We're proud to be here. But I think Alice, your EDC and staff deserves a lot of credit because they would push back maybe on some concepts we had early to go. We want this to be special. And so we want to thank you for your patience. We're here for the long haul. And like I said, I'll be excited when we can get these open and sit out here and listen to a little music and really get our neighborhood. We listen to what they have to say too in Mercer Crossing. So thank you for your time, and we're excited about getting this started. So, and thank you, Allison, for always being a constant through this project the last couple of years.
We do push back a little bit, but get along at the end of the day, most of the time. Do we have any more questions?
Any more questions?
Okay. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to sampling your dinner tonight.
Yeah, we own a bar across the street from Jack's Pub. We had Jack's Pub and Bar, but we had to force him.
He says it's a little bar and grill, but it was 20 volume.
Okay, so,
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
way back.
Yes.
Yeah, we used to use every Monday night. 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Small world. It is. Okay, next up is item A3, receive a biennial update from the Mansky Library Board.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am Kristen Hansen, and I am the board chair of the Farmers Branch Mansky Library Advisory Board. And we're here to give you our biannual update. So just to begin with, our mission and our vision, and these things come from both our bylaws that we've spent the last year kind of updating and tweaking and have sent through the city attorney's office, as well as the ordinance that regulates our board and gives us our purpose. So our job is to act in an advisory capacity to City Council in all matters pertaining to the establishment and use of the library, coordinate with residents, businesses, private organizations, and other entities for the optimal use of the library and serving the best interests of the city. And so that happens through our patron comments, the QR code that comes in the weekly email from the library. And there's also one on a poster as you enter and exit the library. And we do take the patron feedback seriously and you'll see kind of later on some of the things we're doing based on comments from library patrons. We also, that's the next one, gather input and feedback from library patrons on enhancing and expanding library services and provide appropriate recommendations to City Council, and then advocate for the development and advancement of the library. So our board meets the second Thursdays of each month at 7 p.m. and all are welcome to attend. Like most other boards, we skip out on July and December. Our board is comprised of current and former librarians, educators, and other professionals, and our overall board member attendance is at 90%. So some of the library enhancements that we've kind of continued on with as a result of the renovation of the last year is you can kind of see down here the tables that we got that were the old bowling lanes have had some refurb and modifications done to them. They've been cut in half and they've been lowered to kind of make them more user friendly. And this matches feedback we were getting from patrons about these tables. They've also had a coating put over the top of them that protects that beautiful, like kind of rustic wood finish that's happening, so that when we're using them for crafts and other things in the innovation zone, the wood's protected. And then down here is this really cool outdoor table that has been delivered, but it's not been installed yet because it can't get to where it needs to go until the stuff on the creek is done, and then a forklift can get it to the balcony where it's going to go because it's real big and heavy. But it has sockets in it so people can sit out there and they can use it, work on laptops, read books, do the things that one would do at a library. A book drop is coming soon that will be outside the library that you can access from your car, which has been, I would say, like 80% of our patron feedback that we have gotten over the last 6 months is, why don't you have a drive up book drop? So we've been working with facilities and Public Works to kind of figure out a place for that to go, and we've done that. And the purchase order has gone through, and so this project is on its way. It's a done deal. It's a thing that's going to happen. And then Mike Stolke, the remainder of his contract, where he made these little mini book sculptures. They're absolutely adorable. Most of them there's a good portion of them in the children's section, and then also over on top of the books in the sci-fi section. And they're just little portraits kind of stacked. And then like the book cover kind of flaps down and is the bottom. the bottom bit of the picture, and they're really cute. So you should come check them out. And then the butterfly habitats have been immensely successful. We've had several rounds of butterflies come through from the larva stage with little caterpillars through the chrysalis, and then we've released some butterflies back out into the community to help pollinate all the little things going on around our city. Summer reading launched in June and has had a huge success. And then we had the bookmark contest, and I think this one was the adult winner. And the Arts and Council Art and Culture Committee voted on some of those, and then there were some that were just public vote inside the library. Kathy's Critters Petting Zoo came at spring break, and there were too many people to count. It was a huge success, as it always is. Over 500 attendees. Yeah, a ton of people came. Now that the John F. Burke Nature Preserve is back open, the library started doing a pop-up program, and that's what you see down here. Dustin, the children's librarian, goes out there, and there's a story, and then people can enjoy being out in nature. The adult craft night has also really taken off and has some really fun crafts that have been coming up. So if you are a crafter, I encourage you to come. Each one has over about 18 attendees each time for this little recurring program. And then we have new adult and teen tabletop role-playing game clubs, World Cinema Club that shows a different movie, and then there's a creative writing group that has started to meet. And then there's the Wednesday performers all summer. They've had a bubble lady. She did a whole thing with bubbles. Kids were inside of bubbles like Florida. It was impressive. So upcoming library projects. So part of what's in the innovation zone are sewing machines. And we have found a lady to come and do 4 weeks of sewing, like intro to sewing classes in August. And each week's class will be different. So they don't build on each other. So people can sign up for what their different interests are, and then they can come in and check out. The hope is to check out the sewing machines or use the sewing machine inside of the innovation zone. The citizenship classes were a huge success, and we're going to have another round of those in September, along with a teen reading subscription box that will be coming in September, and continuing those pop-up nature programs at the Nature Preserve. We have been seeking a Spanish as a second language instructor, and I have good news that we have had several volunteers come forward, and one of them who said that they would like to lead the program. And so we're starting the process of going through the volunteer process for the city. And then the library also sent out a survey just to kind of see like how interested were people, and it was like 75 or something. 75% of the respondents were strongly interested in some kind of Spanish as a second language program. Coming up in October will be the Monster Bash Halloween program, and then the ever popular Santa and Cookies with the Cowboy Santa and cookies, and once the night before Christmas, which Councilman Roman has read for us before. And then we have a full-size 3D printer and 2 portable 3D printers available. And the portable, like fingers crossed, the portable ones will be available for checkout after we work with IT through some different processes for that, so that we protect the printers and computers and things like that, just for those. So they're really cool. They like printed a little butterfly thing. They're neat, the little 3D printers. And it's not very big. I mean, it's like a tissue box, and it can print these really cool things. Our board activities, we have 2 activities, a spring, summer, and a fall, winter that we're kind of doing. Our next one that's coming up at just a couple weeks is Tearjerker Movie Night. It'll be August 2nd at 6 p.m. at the library in the community hub. And the premise of this is we want to help. I am a teacher. And the thing that I run out of the most as the school year draws to a close is tissues, because little kids are gross and they always have runny noses. And the things that we run out of the most are tissues. And so this is a Tearjerker Movie Night. Your ticket is a box of tissues. You drop your tissues in the box, and you get to go watch Homeward Bound and have some popcorn. And we will then donate all of those tissues to some CFB ISD classrooms, because even though we ask all the kids to bring them, and the kids do all bring them, it's not enough. Like there's never enough tissues. And then in December, Jolaboka Flood, which is the Icelandic Christmas book flood, will be returning. And our goal for this program is that it will be a library scavenger hunt. We'll give people like a little card to go find these things, just so they can be familiarized with the different things that our library offers. And once you have found a certain number of things, then you can turn that in for some hot chocolate and some reading time. And then we'll also be doing the book drive again to benefit our local community. And that's a picture from the book drive that we did last year. So, any questions?
Very good. Councilman Baird.
Nope. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Bennett.
No, been answered them all. Thank you.
Councilman Roman.
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your presentation. It's very captivating. I was like, I wonder if there's an age restriction because I might attend one of those.
Oh no, please do. Everybody should come. You are never too old for Homeward Bound. And if you are a child of the 90s, like myself, who recently rediscovered it on Disney Plus and then showed it to my children, it has aged beautifully. So please come and watch Homeward Bound with us.
And then I was just going to make a suggestion. So two of the schools for the tearjerker,
Yeah.
The two of the schools that are in my district that I know are usually lacking supplies are Vivian Field and Farmers Branch Elementary. So I would hope those would be strongly considered.
We are in touch with somebody at CFB whose job it is to collect physical donations, and then they're going to decide where those things go.
Okay.
So you can contact that person and maybe
Who is it?
suggest, oh, what is her? I don't remember who it is. One of our other board members who works for CFB is in touch with her. But yeah, there's two people that take donations, one person that takes money and one person that takes things.
Okay.
And so if you'll get in touch with that person, and maybe you can hope that they kind of get funneled that way.
Could you email me their name? Thanks.
Yeah.
Councilman Mayor.
Thank you for the presentation, Christine. Appreciate it. And Trevor, all the work you guys do in making the library a lively and engaging destination and education for all ages is, doesn't go unnoticed. So I want to thank you all. No questions. So,
Councilman Jackson.
I have some questions. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I'll echo Councilman Roman's comments. Kind of captivating presentation. Can you talk a little bit more about the book drop? Where is that going to be? What's the
You want to go ahead and explain that,
process?
Trevor?
So I would yell at Mark Moffett because he's the one I've been working at very closely with this. Also, Trevor Hunter, library director. And so me and him have been having several conversations over the last few months. And so as you go in and drive into the library, the main library parking lot, not the one across the street, there's that kind of a 90-degree arc turn. It's going to go right there. So one of the things that we've been looking into is in what we've spent several, I guess probably close to 2-3 hours now, just sitting out watching where people park, how people are getting to the existing book drops. And we've identified multiple times people will just pull up to that exact curve, stop and run to the book drop that's built into the building. So we're going, well, people are already pulling into that spot to go run at the book drop. Why don't we just put the new book drop right there? And then they can just either, have somebody in their passenger seat pitch it out the window, or they can pull in, turn around, and pitch it out their driver's side window on their way out. We looked at the drainage that's coming through off of the lawn, and those drainage vents are further down, so it's not going to impede any drainage. No water sprinklers. It's just a patch of grass that I believe he's going to put a concrete pad on and put the book drop on it and connect it to the sidewalk so we can roll the carts along.
So do I have to get out of the car to drop off? So the book drop's going to be on the left side as I
It'll be
pull
on the
in.
as you're pulling into the parking lot. It'll end up being on your passenger side. Which,
Okay.
if you used the book drop prior to the renovation at the library, it also, the way you had to go through it was on your passenger side.
Okay.
So you can get out and walk around, or you can
Go in,
do
turn
a U-turn
around.
in the parking lot and then kind of
Okay.
dump them that way.
Okay. And that's a fairly wide
Mhm.
parking lot, so there's room to do a U-turn. There might be some congestion, I would imagine, during some rush hours.
Probably less than what's right now. Because right now people are actually getting in park, getting out of their car. I mean, I watched a lady take her kids out of her car, walk the kids up to the book drop, put the books in, and then walk back, put her kids back in the car.
Right.
And it's so even if they're blocking the road, it's going to be dramatically less amount of
Right.
time than.
Okay, good. This has been a long-awaited feature.
I'm very excited.
I'm wondering about, this is a lot of programs, and it's my understanding we have a contractor that runs the libraries, right? The operations of the libraries. And I'm curious to know if in our contract with this third party, what level of engagement or responsibilities they have and what the coordination between the library board and the employees or the third party, what that coordination looks like in putting on all of these events. And at the same time, coordination with like the Parks Board when you do the petting zoo or the pop-up at the nature preserve. What does that interaction look like with these other elements?
So I'm going to go with the other city departments first. So like when we're working with Parks and Rec, that is very initially an email from me to Maria. And so, hey, it's either my staff had an idea, we are looking to do something with, well, not 4th of July, but Summer Funshine. We've got my children's librarian. He goes out to Summer Funshine, reads stories, does stuff with them, and then goes, okay, so let's see if we've got a slot within Summer Funshine, and it kind of trickles its way down Parks and comes its way back. With the John Burke Nature Preserve, that was, I'm blanking on the name of the individual who reached out to Maria, and then Maria went, hey, John Burke Nature Preserve is interested in having the library do a pop-up story time. What do you think about that? And so I went and talked to Dustin and some of my other staff and said, we think it's a great idea. Here's the time slots we have available. We have ideas for story time. In fact, our first one that we did Cheerio bird feeders. And so we did a craft, we did a story time, and it's a very organic conversation back and forth. So once the initial contact has been made, like, here's our idea. A lot of times I will go, Dustin, who's my children's librarian, your contact with the parks person, is XYZ. I'm linking them two together for an email. Y'all figure out, the exact day, the exact time, where you're going to set it up. And we try to treat it as if we're a city organization within.
Okay. So the answer is you guys are coordinating a lot with these other departments and entities to bring these programs together. Okay, great.
So
last question, the 3D printer. What does a 3D printer cost? And when we talk about checking out a 3D printer, a flag goes up in my mind for it's not going to take long to maybe break a printer. Right. So what's the thinking around that?
Let's with the little one. I'm just going to ask, how much do you think it costs?
I'm on $1,000.
180.
$180.
So
okay.
you could go check out an audiobook that costs $50, bring it back missing a CD, or we'll say 3 of them. We're at the same value for 3 audiobooks as this 3D printer. These 3D printers that we purchased are designed to be repairable and moddable. So if a motor breaks down in it, I can go online to the company, order a $15 motor, and we can replace it ourselves. Everything is designed to be easily repairable, easily replaceable. And we're not the first person in the Metroplex to do this. I was talking to one of my colleagues in McKinney, and they have 8 of them that they check out repeatedly, and it's one of the extremely most popular services that they have there. So with the small 3D printers, we're looking, we've bought cases and some extra filament, some other stuff for the 2 for our trial period. We're looking at about $500 for the 2 combined check-ins and check-outs.
So is the city paying for the supplies that go with the printer?
It's coming out of our LS&S supply budget because we're considering it a collection development or a collection item.
Okay. So if I had some great idea for a new widget,
cool. Please email me.
I could come to the library, check out a 3D printer, and at the city's cost, print my prototype, and then go.
Now you may have to pay for your own filament. Now we're sending it with
filament is the material that's
Little,
used.
think of it like plastic thread.
Okay, I don't know 3D printers.
Yeah,
that's why I'm
no.
asking.
Yeah,
So
think about it like plastic thread.
the current concept is that we're playing with it and testing it. Like, is 10 meters of filament? How much does that actually amount? Turns out 10 meters is a lot of filament. You don't need that if you're printing something that's the size of 3 inches tall.
If your kid wants to make their own like Lego mini fig
Yeah.
situation, that's not going to require very much. And you're going to get limited things when you check it out from the library, but they're also going to give you like a link to where you could go on Amazon and you can Amazon Prime yourself other colors and more of things
Okay.
yourself to add on to that little bit that you were given from the beginning. So that it's not that much different than somebody showing up for a craft time and the city's expense for the craft supplies for whatever the craft time is.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just thinking about the cost of ink in my
Right.
regular printer can be sometimes a little surprising.
Significantly less than that. I mean, a roll A standard, everything's in metric when it comes to 3D printers, and I have to do a lot of mental math. A 1 kilogram roll, which comes out to
A kilo is 2 pounds.
well, it's 2 pounds, but how many meters is that?
I don't know.
Okay,
That's a
see
weight
that
measure. Now you're going to length.
I want to
That's all
say it's
kinds of
1,000 meters. Is
Okay.
when you do a kilogram to meters, I want to say it's 1,000 in terms of thread, and we're giving people 10.
Okay. All right.
So and that's about a $35 roll. So it's significantly less than the cost of ink, which seems very bizarre to me. It really,
Right,
ink is
right.
exorbitantly expensive.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
I have 2 comments.
Okay.
One, when you're recapping events in the future, it might be helpful just to see number of attendees just put out by the side of the event, just so we have an idea. But 2 is, since I was the one who brought up the Spanish as a second language, if you institute that, find somebody that is going to teach that, please do not have them do it on Tuesdays.
We're looking at a Saturday morning.
Oh, okay. Even better.
Because that was one of the things in the survey as well, is if you like, how interested are you in this? And then if we had it, what day worked best for you?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm flexible, just can't do Tuesdays. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mayor, I had one quick that I just
Go ahead.
thought of. Has the portrait of Walt Mansky been put back up? I haven't been there. Oh, it has. Okay. I haven't
was-
been there for a couple, 3 months probably.
It was put up in October, November.
Oh, okay.
But it's downstairs in our nonfiction area.
Okay.
So
That's why I haven't
if
seen
you
it then.
if you go downstairs and so like if you came out of the elevator, walked to the reference desk and turned 180, it's right there.
Excellent.
We thought it fit perfectly with our local history section.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next up, Save 4, receive a report on the mandatory crime reduction program for designated apartments. If there's no way we're going to get this is done in 2 hours.
Am I on there?
Oh, that's true. I was trying to learn time to eat. We tried, but that's
Sorry. Myself. So does it come in as a slideshow? Or do I just, it's like that?
Definitely don't want that.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Eric Stokes, Assistant Chief of Police, and I will be talking to you about the great mandatory crime reduction program in apartment complexes. I'm glad you're all here for this. All right. The purpose of the program, it's to protect. We want to protect the occupants of the apartment complexes by introducing a minimum, getting compliance with minimum property standards. We also want to reduce the crime rate, and by reducing the crime rate, it ensures safety and security of our residents that are there. We want to highlight the correlation between crime and making everyone safe. So we want to highlight that, hey, reducing crime makes the apartment complexes and everyone else safe. And we want to be proactive. And how can we be proactive? And that's by just instituting measures, such as preventive measures like the criminal trespass program and some of the other programs, and engaging our stakeholders as they're responsible as well to help with the apartment complexes. So what's the crime index and what's the program inclusion? The crime index rate and how we calculate in Farmers Branch the crime index rate is we calculate the types of crimes that are applicable to that apartment complex or certain crimes that apply. And so we take all those applied crime and we divide that by the total number of units and we multiply that number by 100 and that gives us a number. Then we take the residential crime index
which is adding all of the crime in the single family homes, and we multiply that number by 100. With the residential crime index, we multiply that number twice. And if the apartment complexes are over that number, then they are included into the program. And that's how you get the program inclusion. Clear as mud? Okay. Definitions. The apartment complex. It's any multi-family property that contains 10 or more dwelling units. And the offenses that are applied, the applicable offenses are Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. Part 1 crimes are your violent crimes, which are weighted double. And burglary, theft, and auto theft is all Part 1 crimes. Your Part 2 crimes are all other assaults, your drug offenses, criminal mischiefs, and those type of crimes. There's also crimes that are non-applicable that we do not apply to the apartment complexes, which are your family violence offenses, some of your buying and receiving stolen property. We do not include that into the crime index. So just giving you a list, this is a broad list of all of the complexes that were in the program since the program was first started in 2009. And all the way now to 2023, we have 6 apartment complexes that are in the program that are currently in the program now. This is the largest number of complexes that we've had in the program since the inception in 2009. We normally average 3 to 4. One year we had 1 apartment complex in the program. The black dot that you see in 2017 is when we went to council and we reviewed the ordinance and we modified our ordinance. And so 2017, we went from a fiscal year, from 2016, we went from a fiscal year to a calendar year. And so that's when we started including in 2018. If that question came up, I'm right there ready for you. All right. And then the red where it says Ventana at Valwood, the repeat offender in 2020. Since the repeat offender statute went into the ordinance in 2017, we had 1 complex that's been in that. And that was the Ventana at Valwood apartment complex in 2018, 19, and 20. You get into the repeat offender status on your 3rd year. If that makes sense. Okay. Ooh. If you're in the program of the 16, 17 apartment complexes that were in the program, the requirements of the program is you have to pay a fee. And that fee went up from 2009 to 2017 to a $2,000 fee. You have to sign a crime-free lease addendum. You have to have other requirements, such as criminal background check, be a participant in the criminal trespass program. You have to permit 2 inspections of your complex. And we just created Ordinance 3734, which is the minimum security standards that's instituted by, or it's over code enforcement who enforces that. The repeat offender designation, what I was talking about was Ventana at Valwood that was in there. They would have additional requirements, and those additional requirements would be on-site security, security lighting, key control, and perimeter fencing. Since we started this year, we have 6 complexes in the program, and we're doing a 5-month comparison. We couldn't get that 6-month in June because I couldn't get those numbers in yet, but we could have included those numbers. But since January of 2023 to now, to May, the end of May 31st, 2023, of the 6 complexes that were in the program, if the current numbers, and we can't predict crime, can't tell, but if the current numbers stay the same, and we had the same threshold, 5 of the 6 complexes would be out of the program. And 1 complex, the one in that orange in the top, would still remain in the program. And so I wanted to give you that comparison.
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure I followed you.
There you go. Good. Thank you, sir. I don't know if I followed me either. So here we go. So there's 6 complexes that are in the program right now. And those are the ones in blue, and then that one that's in the orange. And so this index where it says 5 times 12, the index here, if we did the trajectory, because right now their crime index, we did a 5-month comparison for the January to May. And their crime index right now is 4.7. If we project that, say, let's say if their crime rate stays the same, and we project that this are the numbers that they're going to get, they're going to end up at 11.3.
That's the part that I missed. You're projecting at the end of the year.
Yes, sir. And we project that they'll be at 11.3, and then they would be over the threshold. The current threshold is 7. Our average threshold is 6.6 to 7. And so we're projecting, because we don't know what our residential index crime is going to be for them until we calculate at the end of the year. But the projection is, Barrett, you nod your head. You got me right.
Yes, sir.
I was about getting scared. My chief was going to fire me. Fire me. And so, yes, in a month. So that's it. That's it. You understand? So got it now.
So at the end of the one is in orange at 11.3 because that's over 7. At the
The
end of
7 at the end, if we calculate, so for program inclusion, let's go back here. Here we go. The program inclusion, we do the residential crime index and we multiply that by twice. So last year it was 3.5. And so we don't know it, but we're saying it normally averages 6.4, 6.5 to 7. And so they're going to be at 11 point. I can't remember what the 11 was, but they would be over that threshold.
Right. So the blue one right under that is at 8.2. What should they be in orange?
They're projected to be at 7, the canal, but the canal is not currently in the program.
Oh, okay.
So the canal, so but you're
No,
good.
no, I'm talking about Alta Vista.
Alta
Galleria.
Vista. No, Alta Vista. Oh, you know what? I did it wrong. They are at 12.2 now. They're going to project it to be at 8.2. 7.
That's what, when you said over 7, that's where I was confused.
Yes, but we don't know it. But yes, so you know what that is, that they've reduced it. They went from 12.2 and they reduced it to 8.4.
Okay.
And we don't know what the threshold is, 7.0. So but yes, by your theory, yes, they would probably still be in the program there as well if they go over. But they're low. We reduced their crime rate, or I did. The crime rate has gone down, 8.2. So it's gone down. The only ones that have gone up is East Branch and Galleria House.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good question. Good catch.
Well, I just, when you said the threshold of 7, I was
Yes.
like, makes
There-
sense
you
now.
got me now?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
Councilman Roman?
So can we go back to the definitions slide?
The definition,
Yeah.
this one?
One more.
There you go.
One more. Other way. There you go.
There you
you
Okay.
go.
All right. It says definition.
Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, what it's saying is that you're classifying certain types of crimes into specific categories, and depending on the category that you fall in, will determine the weighting that is assessed in the calculation that then determines you whether you're in the program or not.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, let me start here. Do we have any restrictions on apartment complexes being able to have certain types of gates in their parking garages? Like fully enclosed gates that come all the way down from either fire or police?
Do we have fire and police don't? Code enforcement may have those restrictions.
Okay. Yeah, because I would like to understand if there's any restrictions to allowing them to do that.
Danielle Summers, Director of Community Services. So there are building code requirements. It depends on the type of construction. We have some over, I think up in the Miralago ones or something, they put in gates. A lot of them have to be 3-hour fire rated, and they have to meet certain requirements for that they open and close, in the event or something like that. So it's pretty significant, but it's mostly building.
Okay. So I had heard from some complex that they had gates, like it wasn't an arm, it was a full gate that came up and down when someone tried to enter, and that they were not permitted to actually use the gate because of some fire code or some.
So they keep it open?
They kept it open.
Off the top of my head, I don't know why they would have to do that. I'd have to look into that, what complex it is. I'd have to look at their plans to kind of figure out what type of construction it is, what required it, why did they put it there, and to kind of figure out what the requirement would be for keeping it open and closing unless fire has a better.
Yeah, Daniel Leonard, Fire Chief, Orange Ridge Fire Department. So it all depends on our access points there, obviously. So we have to have certain widths and everything to get our equipment in. And there is one business in our communities on the east side that our fire prevention was having to work with because of how they came back and had remodeled that business. And so we could not get access to it. So people were getting locked into the business. So we're having to break doors to get in. And so because of you didn't have access to the gate. So that's probably what they're talking about, the restrictions is, for instance, we have to have the width to get our fire trucks in. but also be able to have access, whether it's not to me or however to get into those days. So if they don't give us that access, we have to get open.
So that was one question I had. But part of the reason why I asked for this to be an agenda item is because I was meeting with an apartment complex on a completely separate issue. And through the course of that interaction, I learned that they had entered the crime reduction program. And I had learned about some of the concerns that they had with the program, specifically crimes that don't occur on the premises, but they would still be responsible for. So I wanted to explore that. So if a package is stolen, I've had packages stolen. Some of them don't require a police report, but depending on what is being delivered, whether it's medication or maybe if it's over a certain dollar amount, I think a police report is required. And I'm just assuming that when a resident who lives in that complex calls the police and files a police report so that they can get those items replaced, the address on that police report is going to be that complex. Is that correct?
That's a complex question. I'll answer it. So first of all, non-applicable offenses also mean any offenses that occurred on the street and carried over to the apartment complex. Those are not included. When you're talking specifically about mail thefts, we look at each of the reports that come in, and if we can trace it back to the apartment complex. So, and given your scenario, if they mailed order something and we don't know that the UPS driver or whatever driver it is sent it into the complex and put it in the lockbox, if they put it in the lockbox of the complex, then that is a crime that happened on their complex, and that's attributed to the apartment complex. There's other scenarios in there, but you're giving us scenarios where we can include or not include into the program. But Stephen Rutherford, the crime prevention officer, and I, we review those and make sure that it's applicable to it per the statute, per the ordinance.
Okay. So if I'm understanding you correctly, when a package theft has been reported, you or Rutherford go through the process of investigating whether the crime actually occurred there or whether it happened somewhere else.
In transit, or it never made the location, someone else has it received, and that apartment complex looked like it was someone else's, another complex, and they show us that, then yes, that's not included into that apartment complex, the one that's asking. You also said something about a report. The reports are required if it's a mail theft. Now, the complexes may have a requirement for a report or not a report, but that's up to the complex and what they want to do. But theft is theft, and we would take a report. If we get a call, we take that report. What we do is, again, like I said, we investigate and trace it back to the complex before we apply it to them.
What does that investigation process look like?
It's a review of the call that went into the officer, and then we get a printout of all the reports that were taken. And then Officer Rutherford, the crime prevention officer, reviews the report and says, yes, this happened at the apartment complex. Then it goes through the chain of command through his supervisors, and then it ends up on my desk. And then I look at it and confirm whether or not this is attributed to the ordinance. It matches what's in the ordinance, and this is what a crime that goes against that complex. And then I put it in there, or we take it out.
Okay. What happens to complexes who enter the program who might be doing anything and everything possible to already ensure the safety of their residents? I mean, if the intent of the program is to help them fix a problem or enhance their security, and their security is very highly it's already really well put together in their entire complex, then what is the purpose of the program? What do you do in that situation?
And that's the great question too. And I only went back to this slide because we had the same instance whenever we went back with Vantana at Valwood from 2009 to 2016. We had the same issue. We've had these requirements. We put in these additional requirements, and they were still being in the program. We changed the ordinance, and that's what the guidance of direction of council is. We modified the ordinance, and we had the repeat offender designation. And so we implemented the repeat offender designation, which had the more requirements of the on-site security, landscaping, key control, perimeter fencing. And I don't know if all those happen. I don't know if it's a combination of whatever, but you could see the numbers here.
Ventana and Valwood, they got out of the program. We did everything that we can with our stakeholders, with the police department, to see what we can do to put those measures in. That new measure that went in with code enforcement, the minimum security requirements, is new. It's new this year. So I don't know how effective it's going to be until we review it for the next year and present it to council for next year. So that's what we're doing. We're working with our stakeholders to present, hey, listen, do we need additional measures? Is there something else that we can do from ours? There something else that our residents can do to help get you out of the program? We're not there yet where we can do more. If there's something more that we can do, then we can do it. But we haven't been there yet. Again, like I said, we only had Ventana and Valwood that had the additional measures for a repeat offender designation. I haven't had a repeat offender. If that makes sense.
What has been the response from the apartments as they're now having to implement, those who entered the crime reduction program that are implementing the new ordinance that we had passed?
I don't know. Sorry.
How much communication do you have with the apartment complexes throughout the crime reduction process?
So there was two that there was three that appealed, two that appealed. The third didn't get their appeal in time. So we had three that were appealed. They weren't happy about being in the program. We went through the appeal process. After the appeal process, they paid their fee and they're still in the program. Crime Prevention Officer Rutherford is with the complexes to do everything that they can to help them to bring them into compliance. I haven't heard, yes, we like it. I don't think they like being a part of the program. So I don't get any feedback from that, but they're doing every measure that we've asked them to do. And they are helping us with the crime prevention talks. They're helping us with site security, helping us with everything that we need to do. They're complying with it.
Okay, so what does the communication look like? Is there like a we're going to check in every month? We have scheduled.
So there's quarterly meetings that Officer Rutherford does. He conducts quarterly meetings.
And my question is specific to the people who are in the crime reduction program and how that communication is different from all the others.
So there's quarterly meetings that are being conducted as part of the program that's in there. Officer Rutherford's in communication with them daily, to be honest with you. And we do a monthly review of all the offenses. And he goes back and talks to the apartment managers each month to let them know where they're at. That was actually a great idea of one of the council members that told us about that. So we go back and we let them know, hey, here's what happened last month. Here's your crime. Here's what we can do to reduce that. Let's see what we can do. But that's Rutherford, and Officer Rutherford does that.
Okay. So I guess I'm going back to my earlier question, which is what has been the response to people having to comply with that new ordinance? If we have regular touch points with them, how is it that we don't have a pulse on their response to that to measure? Are people complying with it, or are people hiring attorneys and trying to, I'm just wanting to understand.
I guess I misunderstood you. Rutherford's in communication with them. I'm not so much in communication. Rutherford, I get all my information from Rutherford. So whenever you say how they feel, I don't know how they feel. I don't. I get with Rutherford and he communicates with me. Hey, listen, here's the apartment complexes. Here's the ones that we've seen a rash of this type of crime or this type of incident. I talked to this manager, or hey, we have a different manager. There's a new manager that came in. Rutherford does all that.
Okay. Can we go back to the definitions one more time? And can you help me understand where package thefts fall?
Part two offenses are the theft.
And how are those?
I'm sorry,
weighted?
part one offenses are theft.
And how are those weighted compared to a part two offense?
Part one, it's just the regular theft is just one. It's weighted it gets one. So if you commit a package theft one time, it's a 1 point against that apartment complex.
Okay.
The only ones that are weighted double are your murder, sexual assault, robbery, aggravated assault.
So package theft is in part one, but it's not weighted the same as.
That's correct. It's a part one offense, but it's not a violent offense.
Okay. And what's the weighting on part two?
Same. You get 1 point. It's 1 point.
So what's the purpose of part one and part two?
The purpose of part one and part two. They're different type of UCR reporting. So that's how we got it corrected through our NIBRS, through our report. It's a UCR reporting offense. And so we said, hey, how can we calculate our crime? So we'll use part one and part two crimes. The serious violent crimes are under part one. The theft, burglary, and auto theft is still under part one, but we didn't want to weight that double.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't think it would be fair to the apartment complex, so it only gets a one weight.
Eric, just to confirm, that's a national standard for reporting. Is that correct that we're
Sorry,
aligned to?
I forget about
National
jargons.
based reporting system. Okay,
That's
just making
correct.
sure we're clear. That's not a
Uniform
Farmers Branch
crime
standard.
reporting, which is a national reporting for the FBI. I apologize about the jargons.
Okay. I don't have any questions, any other questions at this time.
Councilwoman Bennett?
Thank you. Thank you for your report. I'm
Thank you.
good.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Merritt?
Oh, thank you.
I'm good.
You're good?
Thank you very much for your.
Eric, thank you for the presentation. If you go back to the definition slide, I think in the, you touched on it in Omar's last comment, picking up on the violent, you basically have a segregation there between violent with murder, sexual assault, robbery, aggravated assault. Those are weighted double. And then below that line, burglary, theft, those are not weighted double. They're still in the part one.
That's correct.
When I was reading this, I was confused at why appearances, aggravated assault was weighted double. It just the presentation, nuance, if you will. So the conversation is clarified.
And I'll make note. I've got 2 notes already, so I'll make note of that for the next time I present. Thank you, sir.
That's all. Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with where we're at. The opportunity to follow up, as Officer Rutherford does, seems to make that communication necessary. And so I'm comfortable where we are. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Stokes. Appreciate the presentation. I want to go back to the complexes in the program where you have all, yeah, there we are.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
If you have an X in column 2023, that means that in 2022, the crime on your property exceeded the threshold index,
Yes, sir.
right? So right now, then we fast forward then a couple more slides to the 5-month comparison. You know, some of those, if they continue to reduce crime, they're going to come out of the program.
Yes,
But
sir.
the one that's at the top, the East Branch Gallery House, that's a new property, is it not?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay.
They are, I'm trying to think these branch where I have. Yes. they
Yeah,
are.
so that's a new property. And they have 26 Part 1 property crimes, so theft. Does the police department look at that and say, hey, here's the trend? It's catalytic converters or whatever it is that's being stolen, and try to address that in some way?
Absolutely. Proximity, location, East Branch, and they're right off of the tollway.
Right.
The design and the concept of the apartment complex, it's a donut. So the parking garage is surrounded by the apartment units.
Mm-hmm.
And so the gated, they're going in, taking in. The reason why I'm telling you this is because we recently had I'm gonna get in trouble again. We recently had a rash of burglaries there, and it was all in the parking garage with things that were in the vehicles. They were smashing the windows and going to the highway and going down.
Okay.
Rutherford knows about that. Rutherford addressed those issues with the complex. Yes.
Okay. All right. Because at first glance, I figured that that's a new complex. Rent's got to be fairly steep because they're nice, yet they're top of the list with crimes. And to me, it just didn't make sense.
We agree. I agree with you.
Okay. All right. Is there a review that you and Officer Rutherford and others in the police department do to this program to say, hey, there's some changes, I don't know, technology in policing, in property or building code? There's an improvement we can make to our program to help these complexes not make the mark, per se.
Yes, sir. And so when we went back to the revision in 2016, when we went to council and said, hey, there's some suggestions that we need to make to the ordinance, and that was with the additional lighting, security, surveillance, and things of that nature. And then we also worked in conjunction with code enforcement whenever they had the minimum security ordinance that was put in place. Yes, we were in conjunction talking to them to say, hey, listen, if you're going to have new complexes, signage, here's where you should put the cameras and things of that nature. Yes, that's ongoing.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. No further questions, Mayor.
Okay. Chief, thank you. I have a couple questions. Just on the requirements of the program, if you're in the program, hold quarterly crime watch meetings, is that with residents? And would Officer Rutherford or somebody from the department attend that?
So Officer Rutherford would say, yes, we're due for our quarterly, it's the second quarter or third quarter. We need our quarterly department meeting. He would get with the manager would send out flyers to all those units. If there's 409 units, they would send out flyers to them saying, hey, we're going to meet July 15th at this time at 7 p.m. And Rutherford would attend those and say, here's your crime trends. Here's what we see. Here's what we need to address. And how can we help you? Or what do you see? And how can we help each other?
Okay. Then if somebody does achieve the repeat offender designation, are the additional requirements, because you said that there may be additional requirements for being a repeat offender, are those based on the type of crime that they're seeing at that particular place or location versus just saying, well, you have to do all this stuff?
It's addressing everything. We're saying, hey, listen, if it's a part 1, part 2 crime, we're addressing all the part 1s and part 2.
Okay.
But that's a great point. We would also say, however, we're getting a rash of offenses in your parking garage. So whenever we're thinking about lighting our security, our suggestion would be, or here's our recommendation. Our recommendation is that you stage the security officer here, or you do this, or this is what you'd like to do. But you're still required to do each part of those additional requirements.
Okay. And then the last question I had, are there certain types of construction that lend themselves to being more, I'll say, better crime deterrents than others when companies, investors are looking to build complexes?
So I would say, yes, Officer Rutherford's a certified crime prevention specialist, and he's certified in crime prevention through environmental design, which the acronym is accepted. And that part of the planning process, we could go in and say, hey, listen, when you're doing or developing apartment complex, it would be beneficial if we had your landscaping this way, if you had your parking garages that way or whatever. Yes. So to see, has there been a trend to certain apartment complexes? I would yield to Rutherford, and he can tell you exactly what he sees and what's there.
So one of the questions I might ask him the next time I see him is, do we see a higher incidence of crime in wraparound garages versus surface parking?
I would run the numbers and see.
Yeah.
We get our crime analysts and say, hey, listen, let's see what's our trend and go from there. I'd like to give you some objectionable, measurable numbers
No,
to
that's
see
just,
that, hey,
that's
this
just
is
a
where we're at.
philosophical question. Don't need an answer necessarily.
Yes.
But
I'll just address it, Mayor, because Kevin McCoy, Chief of Police, I just had this conversation with Officer Rutherford yesterday specifically about that design. And it was a point that he brought up from that crime prevention through environmental design that's caused us challenges. Specifically, Chief Stokes mentioned the burglaries that we had over the course of the past week. They were all confined to apartment complexes that had those types of garages, not just with us. They hit us, Addison, Carrollton, all the way up to Frisco. And they were primarily hitting those types of locations because they could get into them, easy access, large amounts of vehicles, hard to see into them. And so that's, from an environmental design standpoint, it's tough for us and it's tough for residents to be able to see their property and protect it. You can't get flat surface parking lot like we're typically familiar with here at City Hall, where you can see somebody messing with a car, or at those multi-level garages, you just can't see that.
Okay.
They can be in and out of those locations very, very quickly.
Well, it seems like the wraparound structures are sort of the way of the future. And so maybe from a building perspective, we think about that and how on the front end we can help these folks that are looking to build these types of developments incorporate something into their design that will keep people from just walking into a garage or however
Sure.
they're getting in. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Next is A5. Discuss combining the Parks and Recreation Board, Historical Preservation and Restoration Board, and Manistee Library Board into one board. Consider board structure and appointment of members.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't have a formal presentation for you tonight. I have boards available if you would like to discuss consolidation. If you'd like to combine those three boards, I have the board here so that you can do your dotting preference exercise. Or I also have the boards available from the board workshop that we did for the slate list if you leave them as they are currently. So I'm happy to answer any questions or help you through the process.
So as City Secretary has said, we have several decisions to make as it relates to this. Obviously, leave the boards as they are, discuss a combination, combining all three or less than all three into one. And I don't know, does anybody have any questions of me, since this is one of the items that I had raised?
I think I've made myself perfectly clear on this. I just don't feel that it's going to, I don't feel it's going to save time for staff. Unfortunately, I just don't. It's not going to save time for them. Looking at the events that each board actually contributes to, I feel cutting the library board, there are other things, they're in the red. We all know that. There are other ways to do this, but on the processes and procedures on putting people on a board, we need metrics. We need to be fair. If they're qualified, they're qualified. This isn't
discussing qualifications. This is discussing efficiency of combining boards and reducing workload on staff.
I've spoken to many prior city staffers, and they don't feel like this is going to help. And I went and I asked, looking at what they're being asked to do, with the events, even with the library, what they said today at the presentation today, you can't cut and only have 2 representatives and still expect the same quality that they give right now. And I received an email this afternoon from a resident that they're not even happy with what is being provided now. So they don't feel like it's enough. We don't compare to other cities in what's being provided.
In what, with respect to what?
With
you talk about the library?
Yeah.
Library gets one of the highest satisfaction ratings from our citizen satisfaction survey of all city facilities. So I think one person making a comment about that, probably not representative of
It
the rest
wasn't
of the
just one person. They represented a group. And they take their children to other cities, to other libraries. And, a lot of that, unfortunately, was before our time as a council, and the decisions that were made then. And we can't undo that. But what we can do is fix it going forward. Fixing it going forward, I do not believe, is combining. I just don't. I don't feel strongly that that's going to save staff and be efficient.
Anybody else have any comments on that?
I'm going to chime in and concur with my peer across the table. I'm not seeing the value proposition with this for our residents. I see the ask of the assist with the staff time, but I think we have a number of people that have volunteered their time to represent these boards and commissions, and we have benefited from their efforts, from their communication with us as a council, prior councils. I see this as a reduction of that voice of patrons who are and volunteers, and they're volunteers providing their inputs on these particular areas, whether it be parks, whether it be the library or the historical park. It is important to hear those, and the more eyes that we see in the community that are looking at these things, the better off we get a better product. And so I don't see the value in this, and I would suggest that we leave them separate and go forward from there with our slate approvals. That's my perspective. And I should also say it coincides with what we heard in our last council meeting with a number of the residents, volunteers, and others who stood up and said they didn't see the value in this and they were opposed to it. And our minutes reflect that we had a number that presented themselves there. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, before I discuss what my perspective is, I want to make sure I understand the composition of a combined Parks and Rec board. Parks and Rec, Library, Historical Preservation, right? These three. We had discussed a certain number of folks on one board that would be representative of all three. What was that?
That was 4 from the parks, 3 from the historical park board, and 2 from the library board,
Okay.
As well as 2 alternates.
as well as 2 alternates.
Plus 2 alternates.
Yep.
Okay.
Total of 11. That's
9 and 2.
a modified board from what we have.
So that's a larger board than what we have.
Mhm.
Just the Parks board alone.
Yeah,
Right.
most of our boards are 7
Okay.
plus
right.
2.
Right. So, I think that the optics of combining the board have been that by combining the board, we're downsizing. That a reduction of board members, where we have 3 boards of 7, and now we'd have 1 board of 11, is viewed as or is parlayed as a reduction of services. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as a restructuring. And staff efficiency, while important, is only one of the elements I think that I would consider as a positive in this idea. So not only is it a better use of staff, it reduces the number of staff required to attend the meetings and coordinate meetings. It's a reduction of costs because there's time associated with those efforts. But in having an overarching board that's representative of all 3 interests, and then having an unlimited number of subcommittees that report up to that board, to me, spreads the work out among more people. It gives more resident volunteers more choice to get involved, because a resident volunteer could be on a subcommittee for this event, for this facility, be at the library board, and also serve at the same time on a subcommittee for an event that's going on at the historical park or for Parks and Rec. And they're able to do that without a 2-year commitment to a specific board that then has the responsibility of all of that board's activities. And so just as a simple example, I love to give out candy and maybe sometimes dress up, but I'm not a big Halloween fan, right? So, and I'm a busy person. So maybe I wouldn't want to volunteer for the Parks Board. And I may not want to or prefer the Day of the Dead thing at the historical park. But I like Christmas. And so I might want to be involved in the Christmas event and not necessarily in the Day of the Dead event. and I'm busy, so it's a short engagement that's more focused on my particular interests, to me, seems to give a lot more opportunity for our residents to engage in a more efficient, more specific, personal manner. And so I don't look at this as a reduction of our boards and a reduction of services and a downsizing. I look at it as an opportunity to engage more residents.
Well, that's exactly what it was. This was, no service is going to be reduced. So whoever started that rumor is completely mistaken. This is, when I brought this up, there were several reasons, as I explained downstairs in the hub room, but several of which being, one, the efficiency achieved from staff and helping to reduce some of their workload. Two, the opportunity to have subcommittees and spread the work out and create areas of interest, if you will, for those who want to participate. And then thirdly, this would enable more people in the city to have the opportunity to participate. We have a lot of people who live here who are not voting residents, and consequently, their voice is limited. We have business residents, and so one of my goals through the subcommittee, excuse me, was to be able to include those folks who don't normally have a voice here in the city and allow them the opportunity to participate. These boards are not setting policy necessarily. Policy set by the city council. Okay? Some of them are doing work. They're supplying volunteer hours to, say, the historical park or what have you. And how can we give them something that would actually help them be more meaningful? Now, they weren't elected to set policy. That's y'all's job. But can we engage more people who are interested in certain ideas, certain opportunities that don't have the time to make a lengthy 2 or 3 year commitment to the city? And this was a way to do it. And I was suggesting, we try it and see. You can always go back to the way things were, but I guess you'll never know unless you try it. And again, this is not taking anybody's voice away.
Is there any reason why we couldn't do subcommittees under, as they stand right now, for people to be able to do Christmas or do the Halloween or whatever, and maybe even at that point expand, because we have the subcommittees underneath the library, subcommittees underneath the historical park.
You could do that, but then we still have 3 separate boards where 3 separate staff, arguably 3 separate staff, are going to have to attend after hours, additional workload on those staff members. And, they have a city to run. They have to answer your questions. They have to answer the other 5 members' questions. And then they have to answer all the questions that come from those board members. So trying to cull that down, if you will, so they can focus on their number one priority, which is running and managing the city, what we pay them to do. I don't want our people to get burned out. They're not getting paid extra to do all these meetings.
I agree with that, and that has been a common theme of the hours and I have consistently, as Ben, any of them would say, it's like you will burn out. How do we fix this? But how do we fix this? Seems to me at this moment that we are short-staffed.
I would concur, and I raised that question before and looked across the table, down the dais at the city manager. If that's the problem, It's another body or two that needs to be inserted into the program. And we're a big business here. I mean, and you don't want burnout. You want to be able to spread the workload, and you want to have our resident participation in whatever form that is. I think we've had boards and commissions for the entire lifespan of our community. And so this idea of let's roll them up to save staff, it doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate. People want to figure out how they can add value, and they understand what the commitment is, and we're going to ebb and flow. We'll have a lot of people that will want to participate sometimes, and then we'll go into a drought where we're out there banging on doors. Please participate in a board and a commission. So it ebbs and flows. It's a natural course and cadence, and we have a number of people that'll come in, new people, and they'll bring new ideas, and they'll have that voice and look for opportunities. Having been on both, having been on the Parks Board, there are plenty of opportunities to look for subcommittees, if you will, or volunteer at the events. I mean, if we're looking for how do we volunteer, that's perhaps looking at a different model. How can we volunteer across the entire city? Put a volunteer page up. If you want to be, a warm body at Christmas, to your example, Richard, volunteer. And all of a sudden, parks, all the other boards have a list of people who are willing to give their time. I think we're looking at this from one vector. The one that I have from a process perspective is, yes, it's a great strategy, but we hope to hell that it works. And we don't know that it'll work. And who's going to run the subcommittees? Who's going to lead the subcommittees? What is the end product going to look like? We have a high bar. We expect quality events to occur in our city. And if we're just doing it on the back of a napkin, if you will, it's not going to come off as efficiently as we want. We want professionals that are engaged in that to help us raise the bar, and that we don't have a hit and miss sort of deliverable with some of the volunteers that they have. I mean, it's not a proven concept, and I'm not willing to at this moment cast our lot into the wind and see what happens and maybe go back. I'm a no right now.
Yeah. Well, you say it's not a proven model. It's not a proven model because one, we haven't done it. Two,
who's done it?
I have some questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So maybe you can help me answer these questions, Stacy. Who gets to appoint residents to these subcommittees? How would that work? Would it be something that the board would be able to appoint members into a subcommittee?
Well, they're not going to be appointed, but they can
Well, yeah.
participate. And so, yes, the board would be looking for those.
Yeah.
volunteers.
They'd be in charge of soliciting and getting people to participate in that. Yeah. And would they also be the ones to control what subcommittees get created and when?
The board is, the subcommittee is going to be the board members.
Right.
So you're going to have, historically, if you have a board of 7, you're going to have 3 or less board members that are going to be in charge of that subcommittee.
Okay.
And then citizens or a business community member can take part in that subcommittee.
Okay.
And they would dictate, yes, what we're going to be discussing and things of that nature.
And do we have the capability of being able to keep a running list of people who are interested in volunteering? I'll stop there. Interesting. Yeah. I don't want to give you a compound question. So can we keep a running list of people who are interested in volunteering?
Possible.
Okay. I think, and I guess I go back to when I first created TikTok. I'm a millennial, so I kind of give millennial examples. But when I signed up for TikTok, it asked me all my interests. What do you like? And I guess it geared the videos that I would see to that. Would we be able to create a special application for people, engage their interests, and have those selected, and then keep all of that information readily available to the board members who could then, based off of interests, select who can participate.
We can create another application, just like we did for the multicultural event.
Okay.
It's different from our regular board and commission application. And you can, specialize that template how you see fit. How many interests do you want to have?
Okay.
About application or an app?
Application.
Okay.
Not an app that you download and watch videos on, but an application where you would apply. I find this to be really appealing to me, and I think maybe the lens that I'm looking at it is sort of a conversation that I often have to have with clients that I advise. There's a risk and there's a reward. And sometimes the risk is higher for certain things, but that means that usually the reward is potentially higher. And on the downside, it could be very devastating. I think we've taken some risks. We've taken risks with hiring Ben, and we're but we've just had a discussion where we think he's doing such an amazing job. We've taken some risks, and that's paid off. And so when I'm evaluating the risk of trying something new, I have to look at what is the potential outcomes. So I'm thinking about the number of residents that I have in both communities, in the little neighborhood that I live in Mercer Crossing, as well as the neighborhood in what I would call the Hispanic portion of my district. And there's a significant number of people there who own a home here and who want to volunteer, who want to participate, and who want to be involved and want to have their voice heard. But because of the residency status, they're not able to participate in our city elections. They're not able to participate in our boards of commissions. And we're essentially closing the door and saying, try again after you reach your citizenship status. And just given the past of this city, which I wasn't even here for, but it seems like we should try to look for opportunities to be more inclusive of people who wouldn't otherwise be able to participate. I think we're opening the door to those people and welcoming them in and asking for their opinion. Their opinion is just as valid as anyone else in the city. We also talk, and we will continue to talk more about this as the budget progresses, but we talk about our revenue consisting of roughly 75% from businesses. The businesses here are significantly invested in our community, just as much as residents who own a home here. Why not allow them an opportunity to participate if they're invested here? I think that's a plus. As we think about some remarks that were made at the last meeting about this, some people mentioned the word politicalness. As Stacy has helped me clarify, we are only going to be involved in selecting board members for what would be the new restructured Parks and Rec board. Beyond that, those board members would then be responsible for creating a board, a subcommittee. They would be responsible for ensuring that residents using the list, as we've just discussed, are attending these meetings and would be responsible for selecting those people. That completely takes us out of that equation. And I think that's sometimes where the politicalness can exist. As much as we would like for it to not exist, it happens. And I think it's important to recognize that and move forward. But I think that presents a key solution to some of the problems that we heard at the last meeting. Richard touched on this. He talked about short-term engagement. We have had issues with attendance in the past, so much so that council felt it necessary. And I've been on a board before. I will tell you that no board member wants to be the bad guy to say what absence is excused and what absence is not excused. And after so many non-excused absences, you get removed, and that's the reason why. Nobody wants to be the bad guy and say, sorry, you've been removed, but the decision has to be made for the betterment of the board as well as the organization as a whole. And this creates a solution for that where some people may just really be interested in participating or volunteering or having their voice heard for a specific thing that might appeal to them, either because of their background or their interest or whatever. And I think it creates a pathway to accomplish that. And then one of the other things that I thought was really appealing, which wasn't really obvious until I really sat and thought about it more thoroughly, but it is creating a succession plan for us as council members, because ideally the people who are on the boards are going to be responsible for being real leaders in this. They're going to be responsible for holding people accountable to make sure that they come in, for making sure that voices are heard, making sure that they ensure that there's transparency, to make sure that the information that is discussed in these subcommittees end up making it to city council. There's going to be an enhanced layer of responsibility that I think creates an ideal position for somebody who maybe one day would like to run for council. And that would make them an even much better city council member, just having that really rigorous leadership experience. So I find that there's a significant number of benefits when I look at the downside. The downside is, hey, this is going to be a train wreck. But what we have an option to do is to revert courses and go back to where we were before. So for me, it might be a big risk to take, but I think the outcomes are significantly positive. I think they will move our city forward significantly by paving the way for people whose right now voices are not being heard. So as a result of all those factors that I've considered, I'm in support of this. And I mean, I have other questions, of course, but as of now, I'm in support of it.
Very good. Any other comments?
Sure.
Oh, Martin, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm generally for it. I like simple, given the choice. And it seems, I wanted to ask you, the subcommittees cannot be a quorum, correct? So they would have to be 4, or does that apply to the subcommittees?
You know, we want to avoid the appearance that we're meeting in less than certain numbers to avoid having to post a meeting and not let the public know. So aside from the legal requirements, we want to avoid the appearance that we're trying to meet in fewer numbers so people don't know what we're talking about. Because the committees sometimes they do all the tough work, hard work, and that's where all the great dialogue may be. And people don't know about it, it's not posted, don't have an opportunity to hear it. And then the committee comes back and tells the full board or commission, they say, that's a mighty fine idea, let's implement that. But the public didn't have the opportunity to hear all the thought processes from below. So, if it's a quorum, certainly we're going to have to post a notice. And less than a quorum, it depends, because then we've created more animals. We've created the board,
that's why
and
I
then
was
the
asking.
sub-board, and so we got additional posting and staff requirements. So we just have to be sensitive to that.
That's why I was asking, because obviously if we've got multiple subcommittees and we have to have city staff there, that's.
But you can have a subcommittee of 3 members. They go out and do everything and whatever and come back. As long as we have a full discussion about it
Sure.
before the full board or commission, then you're fine.
Okay. Where I was going with that, I was going to suggest we maybe add 2 more people and make it an 11-person board, so that the subcommittees could have another person on them. Just to throw
But the subcommittees would be it would be a mixture of people who serve on the board as well as people who don't serve on the board.
Well, but I'm going to have to be careful, because I don't think that your intent is that your park board would have the authority to appoint people to, well, I guess
Pete?
your idea is to
So-
let them create their own subcommittees?
Yes.
Which could be residents, even non-residents, and, okay.
Yes. So in the example that I use, let's just say you have this combined board, okay? And which is comprised of members of the library. Well, we know we've got X number of events that they do throughout the year at the library. The library can have subcommittee, or the board can have a subcommittee for library events. At least one of the library board members needs to be on that subcommittee. Okay, and then they can get volunteers from the public, what have you. When you look at other things that are going on, let's say Halloween, Day of the Dead, Christmas, Easter, ice skating rink. I'm just saying, all these other things that happen at different times of the years. Maybe we have 4th of July parade comes back. The board can appoint a subcommittee for each one of those functions or events, if you will. And then that subcommittee can go out and do the research or come up with the idea, whatever, present it to the board, have full discussion, and then the board can take the formal action to be compliant.
Okay, so, so in this reorganization, we're gonna have to give that park board, if that's the only one, the authority to appoint create subcommittees and appoint members
as needed.
And as needed. And if you're looking to not DQ somebody because they're not a U.S. citizen or a resident of the city, then we'll need to address that as well. Because I think we have a default provision for boards and commission that they have to be a qualified voter, which would
Yes,
be
for
a
boards and
resident, which would-
commissions, but subcommittees would not have to adhere to that same, at least the way I'm envisioning this, because we might have business residents, we might have residents of the city who, I don't know their status.
I think right now we have subcommittees of people who, I think there's one for the cemetery, but he doesn't live in the city.
Do they submit the application, do the background check? Okay. I'm just saying we'll have to address it and make sure we don't have some other default situation jump in and cause an unintended consequence. So I'm with you. I understand.
Okay.
Got some more work to do on the ordinance.
I still think that if we're combining the three boards, that 9 is at least too few people to be on the board. I'd like to see it at least at 11.
So would you suggest we'd add,
I'm not sure.
which board would we
Yeah, I'm not sure.
increase from? Yeah.
Do 4, 4, and 3.
Could do 4.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the combined board, regular meetings, and the topic may be a library topic, or it might be a parks topic. But the library guy might have an idea about the parks that wouldn't have otherwise been included in that meeting. And so there's a lot of, I think, good cross and open conversation from people from different disciplines.
I sat in a meeting that we had at the rec center with all of, with the park board, the historical park board, several other boards, where they were trying to encourage communication and interaction. And the library board, or the library, does things at the nature preserve. They do things at the historical park. Okay, so we already have some of this going on, but not at a very large scale. We're not, I guess, truly maximizing the potential of what we could do. And again, my thought in suggesting this, you all have to vote whether to accept it or not, is to bring all this under one roof. You know, we've got really good minds that are on these boards right now, but now we're going to take some of them from each and form this bigger board. We're not getting rid of other members. We would just have to reclassify them as to maybe the subcommittee members. And I don't want to lose talent, but we want our talent to work together for a bigger benefit, not in just one little silo. With the subcommittees, you have the opportunity to work in your own little silo. Christmas, Easter, Halloween, whatever. That's the beauty that gives you. So, and the fact that non-residents, our business residents or non-citizens, so to speak, could participate. I'm trying to include more people in the process of this city, and we have people paying taxes to live here that don't have a voice. Not fair.
Well, I agree with that. But I still feel like we could do subcommittees under what is presently there.
I disagree with that because, and there was a statement, Councilman Merritt, that you had made about we're a big city, let's add another person. I don't think that's necessarily the answer, is just add another employee to manage boards if it's the efficiency on our staff that's the main concern. But what we gain with this is broader interaction among multiple disciplines, a larger group of involvement from residents. We gain a channel to our business community for engagement that we don't have today. They can't engage in these boards. We could use our chambers of commerce to help get word out to businesses to say, hey, there's an opportunity to serve in these capacities if you're a business that's interested. Right? I'm sure that some of our restaurants would like to be involved in some of that. There's some that are involved at every event, but they're not part of the planning per se. I don't see that we're losing anything by combining the boards. There's no loss. In my mind, there's zero loss, other than we are using a board of 11 or 13, whatever it is, versus 3 boards of 7. If we create an efficient place on our site where we have year-round open applications for people to get involved, we have a good communication strategy for opportunities to engage, we have a constant flow of people who are interested in bringing services, events, amenities to our city.
Pete, if a existing board wanted to create a subgroup now, could they engage non-residents or citizens, and non-residents and businesses in a subcommittee right now?
Arguably so, but there's no, right now, as I recall, there's no express. So it's not something that we normally contemplate that.
Correct.
But
there's nothing prohibiting it at the moment.
Right.
So
we could make that change.
But nonetheless, it would be better if we gave such board or commission that
correct
that power, because otherwise, we want to make sure that the board and commission stay in their lane, don't go outside their lane of traffic, and then we have friction between council and this mega board, so forth.
Yeah, and I think that's, and Richard, let me go back. I want to be clear, crystal clear. You made a reference that I said add a person, and you inferred that would be responsible for boards and commissions. I never said that. I said that we'd offer another staffer. There are plenty of things to do in this city. I never said that, so I want to be clear.
My understanding was you were wanting to add an employee, maybe not specifically for boards, but add a body to the count because of the increased workload.
That's the way I heard it, but I want clarification. That's what I heard when you said it.
So the way that our city manager has structured this is that directors are leading the boards and commissions. We've all heard that. So
Somebody in a leadership position, not necessarily a director, because the parks team would be pulled. Parks director would be in a professional liaison in that point, because the majority of the workload with the boards is not just the meeting themselves. I'll use the charter review committee since it's our newest committee. It comes up every so often, a number of years, right? The meeting itself is not the bulk of the work. It's the homework that comes from that only staff can do in the current alignment. And so that board on its first meeting created a litany of homework assignments. And so immediately we moved to work with the chair, with the mayor's endorsement as well, to say, hey, we need to form subcommittees of this group. It's a larger board. And the homework that can be done by anyone will be delegated to those different subcommittees to report back. Because otherwise, Stacy would have worked the entire weekend working on this. And I had to tell her no. I said, no, you're not going to work the entire weekend. We need to redirect how this is being done. And so that's part of the alignment of the boards as well. It's not just, hey, we have all these great ideas, staff go forth and do all this research. It's pushing it back to the boards to be structured in a way that allows them to do that homework, their part of working together. We talked about a board that volunteers a lot of times. So the senior advisory board, for example, a lot of what they do is they provide that support for staff in the events that they host at the branch connection. And so it's making sure there's a balance there between the two, because if it just goes boards here, and they almost become a quasi mini council guiding this, whatever staff member it is, to do all these things, bring all these ideas forward instead of provide feedback or research some ideas and bring back and report on those feedback structures. So that's why I want to be clear on the amount of work there typically comes from there's ideas. I'm an idea person. I come to my staff, I sent an email earlier, said I have an idea already, and Stacy's already responded to it, but that turns into homework for the staff members beyond the meetings. So the meetings themselves are one element of it. It's what those meetings produce that can be sometimes an exponential amount of work, which is going to take sometimes 10, 20, 30 hours of time to put together and package in a way that allows the next meeting to move forward. It's similar to almost how the council works too. We're going to get future agenda items. We're going to get questions. As soon as those questions come in, they're delegated out to different staff members, depending on who's available, who's at work, and making sure we get those answers back to staff. And so it's that same type of relationship, but also reflecting on the fact that the council is the board of directors for the city, whereas these are advisory boards, and trying not to create too much of a burden on the staff that are assigned to those boards. And so every board's different, so it's unique. Sure. But each one requires different types. Sometimes it's lead prep, like ZBAs, you prep ahead of time type of board. P&Z is the same way, but they also tend to generate sometimes, hey, we got to get the attorneys involved. And so there's just, every board is unique, but each one, I don't need a staff member to run the boards, but it's just being cognizant of the impact they do have on the staff and the workload that they are carrying. We do run lean, but my needs, council will say, hey, Ben, as city manager, do you need more staff? I have a long list of staff needs way before it comes to board liaisons and appointment and staff for that. There's just there's always need in the community.
Sure. And that's what I'm looking, if we all look at a performance review, it says other duties as assigned almost always at the end. So I want to be clear with my peers here that we do a lot. Staff does a lot, but we need to make sure that we have enough bodies to do the work. And it's not suggesting for a moment, and I want to clarify if it was misconstrued, that I'm not suggesting we have a boards and commission staff.
No, I was just thinking you meant maybe we need to add another person to the body count so that the work can be handled.
And that's true, but it's not focused. Okay. I want to be clear. I heard the inference that it was solely for the purpose of boards and commissions. So I want to go back. Mayor, you made a suggestion here just a moment ago that we weren't doing away with any of the existing volunteers. And that was the first time I'd heard that particular statement. That is it your assumption or perhaps goal that the existing board and commission members would be part and party of these subcommittees?
I would think so, but that's going to be up to them.
Up
to the board.
Well, it'll be up to the individual too.
Again, there's some lack of clarity around that particular operating model. So again, I've spent my professional career looking at strategy. It's a great strategy. It's blue sky. Let's do something new. Omar, you talked about risk and reward. I think many of us have seen we don't have a whole lot of the tactical. There's questions flowing around this about the tactical. How will this work? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? And then the last leg of that three-legged stool is the operations. How will it come out? How will the subcommittees feed back into the board. Will it be timely? Will we get these events off the ground on a timely basis? That's where the rubber hits the road, and I don't see a risk and a reward that's worth taking in that regard right now. That's from my perspective.
All right, so let me try to draw this to a conclusion. I don't want this to be some for it, some against it. If I need to go back and think about it and strategize and work with you to come up with a plan, then I'm willing to do that. I think it's important to do. We should all be on board. We should all be on board if this is something that we're going to do. But I would like us to take this undertaking seriously and commit to figuring out if this is truly going to work for our city. In the meantime, we can continue with the boards that we have. The boards are still advisory to council. They do not tell us what to do. They make suggestions and recommendations. You all are the decision makers. Board members are subject to the ethics policies, the same that we are. We want to make sure, I think all of us in this room want to make sure that we're getting good information, good communication from the boards, but the boards that we have are no better than the direction they get or receive from council. So the onus is really on the council to give good, clear direction. Here's what we're thinking. Because when you don't, then boards don't know what to do and they're going to go look for things on their own to come up with. And that might be contrary to what your elected philosophy is. Or yours.
Sure.
So,
Subcommittee, who the chair is, how that's determined, how many's on a subcommittee, and then maybe an example. As Trevor and Kristen were talking about the library today, I was impressed again with the number of events, and just it seems like all of a sudden there's more life in our library reports. Not that I've been on council for more than a year, but I was here for the last one, and it seems that there's something kind of coming alive over at Mansky Library, to me, anyways. And so my questions to them about their interaction with the contractor and other boards and staff was with cause. Maybe there's a subcommittee that puts together the summer programs, all programs done in the summer. Or maybe it's a subcommittee that just deals with one particular event, the bookmark event. You know, there's a lot of different options here, but I think it'd be nice for us as a council, as we vet this out, to see an example of maybe what that might look like.
well, we can put this on the shelf for a year because I don't want to do anything and upset the apple boat in the middle of the year. So
Right.
we'll have
Agreed.
board and commission appointments again next year. My challenge to each of you would be to put some serious thought behind this. And let's come back at a future date and have some discussions, have discussions amongst yourselves and see, does this make sense? If it doesn't, then we'll be quiet.
Can we get some direction from you on how to stay out of the weeds and not get in trouble with the subcommittees?
Well, before we jump to that one, there was a first question that was asked about, can we do a flow chart? We can do that relatively quickly. We have experience with subcommittees. We can put the process together very quickly. My team moves very, very fast. But to make sure I'm confirming what I'm hearing is Stacy's about to start training her boards and commissions. She has orientation on July 31st. And so she's looking for direction on where council would like her to go with your advisory boards because she's got to start her processes. And so she's really looking our we considering still merging now, or is that a bigger topic that moves forward? We put in our strategic plan and align it? And do we go with the slates that y'all have already worked through? How would y'all like her to proceed? Because she's looking for direction.
Well, we've gone through the slate preference list, okay, for these boards. And so we have that already specified. So I would suggest, and please feel free to chime in, that if we move forward with what we've already expressed preference for, that is what will be moving forward for the next year.
Right.
So on August 1st.
Bring that back to the next agenda for appointment, official appointment.
Okay.
I thought that was part of what was coming out of this meeting. Are we not? And maybe I'm.
That was if y'all consolidate,
Only if it was
yeah,
consolidated.
we can't put them two different opposite things on there. So it was if y'all decided, because that way it was one item instead of three. And so we'll move that one. And also I believe, Stacy, we're sunset reviewing in 25. Is that correct? So on the broader topic of this, looking at boards and truly, because this would be eliminating a board, they are up for sunset review in 2025. So please keep that on your radars as well. So a formal review does require council in 2025 to make these considerations as well.
Yeah. So are we in agreement of?
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to kind of chime in here that in this process, it seemed like we're gonna be the subcommittee and we should come back with that instead of asking our city manager for that. If you're going to use that example.
Well, I think.
No, I was just wondering, it was
why
just.
would we not come up with, work with this and come up with something that we feel that we could all agree on amongst ourselves?
Yeah, I was just
Yes,
suggesting an
that still would be a
example.
quorum, but I think if we're going to do that and we're saying that teams and boards and commissions are putting onus on staff, it's ridiculous that we're putting onus on staff when we need to eat our own dog food, as sometimes is the term in the business world is. I think we need to figure that out. And that's what I heard the mayor ask. Well, let's work together for this and not ask the
Well,
staff.
this is our decision and it won't be a subcommittee's decision.
Right.
Yes, we're one and the same at this point.
Y'all also have a dedicated employee, and I run the city on y'all's behalf at the direction you all set. So a little bit different. Those are your advisory boards. They do not have an employee to direct. And so much different.
Okay.
That's the delineation I put in place is
That's
y'all
fair.
are my board of directors. I am your employee. Y'all direct me what to do as your employee, and I lead the staff in the direction you all set me to go. So that's the difference. It's when the challenge sometimes comes when the boards sometimes will see a lot of work that can be done and push it to the and that's where we try and set some of those barriers in place because that's where it starts to get cumbersome.
Well, and maybe I didn't articulate my question well enough, because I'm okay with, let's go forward for the next year with our preference selection so we can move forward. But save this as sort of another study session discussion for a light study session.
Yeah.
If that may happen, I think there's maybe once or twice in a year that it happens. But we save it, but we don't let this sit too long.
Right.
But if we have something to start with, a flow chart or an example of how it works, if it's not cumbersome on staff to help us get started with that discussion and whenever we have it would be good.
Okay. Very good. So we're going, just so you know, regular agenda J1 will come off. So just know that won't happen. Moving forward. Thank you. Next up, pardon me, is A6, discuss amendments to the city's ethics policy related to the endorsement of candidates.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Erin Flores, Deputy City Secretary. And we're going to discuss the continued discussion of the changes to the ethics policy. So on April 4th, you all had a discussion about putting language in there regarding endorsing candidates who are running for council. You guys asked Pete for some direction. He put a memo together for you all with some proposed language. And that proposed language is right here. And y'all are free to discuss.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. So I asked that this be added to our discussion quite a while ago, and I'm glad to see it come to this point. I just want to make sure that my intent is clear among the council and the residents in that, in an effort to promote impartiality, to maintain nonpartisanship among our council, that it makes sense that we wouldn't use our council seat as an influencing factor in our local elections for council. I recognize there's a First Amendment, we all have First Amendment rights, and that is unblemished in this process, but I think it makes sense for us to have as part of our code an understanding that we all agree this is not good for our city for us to use our position to influence council elections. And so I'm okay with the language. I would maybe suggest we add the qualifiers in there about in the interest of impartiality and nonpartisanship in the best interest of our residents' interests, something to that effect. But I realize also that this is not code that is necessarily enforceable under the Code of Ethics, but it's a guideline.
Right.
A behavioral guideline, right?
For clarification, the mayor is part of the city council, but does mayor need to be listed on there?
Mayor is defined under our
I
code
understand, but
as
just
council.
he's into the. Well, I understand, but just since this is not enforceable, it's mainly just that we're stating. It seems like it would clarify even more.
Right.
But if it's absolutely not necessary, then
He's defined, mayor's defined under council.
We can say
I
mayor
knew
and
that.
city council.
That's what I was suggesting. I knew that the mayor was part of it, part of the council, but
But the average resident
the average
reading
resident
will
does
not,
not.
will not understand that.
Good point.
That's all I was saying. It's
Yeah,
just
good point.
clarifying. Unless you think it's okay for us to chime in on the mayoral races.
No, I do not.
I know.
Any other comments?
As a First Amendment right, so everybody understands that it is not enforceable. This is effectively a gentleman's agreement.
Mutual agreement, my mistake. Bad
You're
choice of
okay.
terms.
You're okay.
Mutual agreement.
I'll just say I don't particularly see the need for this. I mean, the challenge will be, at 9 o'clock some evening, someone's going to call and ask me what I think. And as we've already said, there's no enforcement to this.
Right.
I just think it's not necessary. I understand your statement that it's good practice, and I totally agree with that. But that's a personal decision, not a body's decision. And if we make it a body's decision, we can't enforce it. So that's weird.
Yeah, it is.
Understood. And to your point, to make sure, especially for those that are watching or listening, if someone were to call up David Merritt and say, "Hey, David, your neighbor," let's say, what do you think? You can say whatever you want, but if my name showed up on a candidate's website endorsed by Richard Jackson, city council member, that in my mind is problematic. If it said endorsed by former city council member, that I don't have a problem with. Because you're former and you're
Endorsed by
off.
Richard Jackson.
Yeah, let's go to
Or,
that.
or just
use.
endorsed by
You're
Richard
not
Jackson.
using your
Right.
official capacity.
I'm not, even though people know, most people will know, some may not, but I'm not using the prestige of my office or the title of my office as an influencing factor in a political election locally.
I just
That's
think
all.
we're opening a Pandora's box for another use case that will, I don't see the need for it personally. And I think I've had other situations that I've experienced that people are going to say and do what they want to with the First Amendment right.
Right.
And, you know, people will make their own determinations on whether they support that or not. So I don't see the value of spending staff time, which is valuable.
Well, Stacy's going to get a slew of,
You know, we don't need to be chasing this particular.
yeah, ethics violations, you know, such and such said such and such, you know.
But it's not a violation according to that. Yeah.
But they don't understand that.
Pretty simple to read.
So,
So Mayor, I would like to see this move to a vote.
That would have to go downstairs.
It's not on, I don't think it's on the.
No,
agenda for
understood.
action.
I'm just saying I'd like to see it on council
We'll bring-
agenda.
We'll bring back
bring
an
it.
ordinance with that proposed change.
To take action.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is A7, discuss updates to the board appointment process to include implementation of a scoring system for appointments. Councilwoman Bent.
so you don't get the job if you don't fill out the application. And it's pretty simple. There were people that just simply didn't answer the questions, and you just don't get the job if you don't fill the application out. And I feel like that's a pretty straightforward one. I understand, and I know that the chairs, you know, no one wants to be the bad guy, as Councilman Roman said, but they still have to abide by the rules. And absences are absences, but it's not just, as I found out last week, when I was appointed to the Senior Advisory Board, there was somebody on the an alternate that was skipped over. Why? Why were they skipped over? You know, why didn't they just roll up? Why aren't we seeing that happen? If these are our rules and that's why it's there, I mean, why was I not the alternate at that point? And, you know, as they just roll up that direction. So I just feel like we need to be very crystal clear with people what expectations are, along with another comment that came to me about another board. They went to their first meeting and they were like, I didn't know this is what we were going to be doing. And I just kind of laughed. I was like, it's on the agenda to make it crystal clear what the job expectations are. You know, is it a working board? Is it, you know, ZBA, and you just kind of show up and, you know, obviously there's homework and it's a governing board, but you know, you're not doing a party, right? And so I feel like this comes back to communication very clearly to our residents and what our expectations are.
Okay. Well, I agree that if somebody hasn't taken the time to complete the application, then they're probably not going to get considered, number one. What the metric system, as you explained, doesn't take into account is the personality and the culture of the applicants. And so I have some difficulty with that. I understand trying to get folks and use the system to score everybody, but then there's the intangible.
And then there's the intangible,
Okay.
and that needs to be considered as well. But why bring us a group of applications that really don't even, you know, it's a lot for us to have to review as a council for applicants that didn't even answer questions.
Well, then I think we explained that on the front end. Here's the application. Incomplete applications will not be accepted. Okay. And I would just say for me, because I've been through this many times, David has too. You know, each council member, they should review all the data when making an appointment. Well, what is that data? Part of it's their application. Part of it is us knowing the people that we have gone out and solicited and said, hey, why don't you apply for that board? Why don't you apply to be on XYZ? Because that's part of our job, is doing that, knowing our constituents and trying to get the best people to help serve in whatever capacity. So I think a lot of times we have to use our own judgment, whatever that value system is internal to each of us, and it's different for each of us, to make that final decision. Yes, a metric system can be good getting us to here, but I got to get up to here.
Correct.
Okay.
agree.
And that's where I'm sort of stuck with. But for me, you don't fill out the application or it's not complete. Thank you for,
I don't
thank you for
care.
submitting, but you're
If
not
I-
going to get
even
picked.
if I do know you, I mean, it matters not. That shows whether you care or not.
I have a question.
Sure.
Stacy,
Yes.
I have a question. I've applied for jobs before, many online that warn you and say, incomplete applications will not be reviewed. Or, on the other hand, I've also seen some where, it asks you certain questions. Do you have this certification? Yes or no? Do you have it right? So it's like, if you don't answer the right way, or if it's incomplete, it immediately responds to you and says, thank you for your application. It's incomplete. You will no longer be considered. Is that something that we might be able to do?
Yes, we can certainly make required fields and therefore they can't proceed.
Okay, that
unless
makes sense.
That's completed.
Okay. Does that do it for you?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from anybody on that? Is everyone okay with that?
I think we all talked when we were in the last. that
Right.
We needed some additional questions. I think the process enhancements, is something that we should be looking at as we continue.
And I think it's important for them if they're bilingual, we need to know that gives us a more diverse group to pull from, and we have that community that needs to be represented. So
I think this is part of the other discussion, maybe, in how boards and subcommittees would work, is really overhauling the application process. And I know Stacy actually had a presentation she was going to give on this that we didn't see. The pros of a rubric system and cons and such, and scoring process. But in the interest of time, I think this is something that we look at the process as a whole, whether it's more questions, different questions, fewer questions, video, no video, online application. Clearly, it's a misstep for us to have accepted an application that was incomplete. That's water under the bridge at this point, but a future conversation, I think, should look at our application process as a whole. And there should be a level of minimum inputs and requirements, whether it's bilingual, prior board experience, whatever, fill in the blank. There's some check boxes that kind of help us organize the candidates that have met this threshold, and then we get into the other stuff that's not exactly measurable on paper.
Right. And you're clear that is a component of the determination.
Right. Right.
Rather than, I scored 9 points. Why did I not get on? It's back to, we'll use, an equation. That portion of intangibles has a value itself. And it may not be scored, but it weighs into the overall factor.
It's part of the formula.
But it's about being clear
on the front end.
and collecting and communicating all of that information that'll help our council and future councils make, determination. And Sherry, I would say you're exactly right. You have to know the people. And so the opportunity of calling applicants, getting to know them, all of that, that's part of the expansion of this that we should lay it as a best practice.
I'm all for looking at redoing the application process. And I won't go into details, but I have lots of ideas.
So I'm sensing that this scoring system, and I hate to use that term.
It's
but
part of the application process.
It's part of the application process. So we're going to table this and review the application process, work with the city secretary on that.
I'll be happy to put that together, get a process together, the application questions, and just bring all that forward so we can review what you want to see, what you'd like to add. Do you want to keep the interview process, the streaming of the video portion of it? Go through all that.
Very good. Good. Okay.
Perfect. Is council okay if we delay bringing that back until after the charter review committee?
Yes.
So it gives her some
Yes.
time since we're not
Yes.
recruiting
Yeah,
yet.
she's
Thank you.
busy and we've got some time.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I was clarifying the expectations of
Okay.
that.
So food is here. I'd like to break so we get something to eat, take a break. We've been here since 2:00 anyway. Do that, take 14 minutes and then come back and we will pick up with A8.
Perfect.
You want to bring the food back in here or just eat and come back? No eat.
Well, let's bring it in here and we're going to start at 5.
Okay.